Chapter 479, September 15th, Wulong City. The originally inconspicuous county had now become the temporary headquarters of the Shanghai territory. The teleportation formation in the city would flicker from time to time as people came and went between the two cities. In the military meeting yesterday, Ouyang Shuo had decided on the military reorganization plan and the structure of Zhaoqing County. The military and the civil officials of the protectorate were all busy as if they're on fire. A large number of clerks were transferred from Shanghai City to help deal with the aftermath. For Shanghai City, dealing with the aftermath was a smokeless war. Its importance was not much different from the war that had just ended. Whether or not Zhaoqing County could be successfully brought under the rule of Shanghai City and assimilated into the system of Shanghai City depended on the batch of civil officials. They would instill the system and ideology of Shanghai City into every corner of Zhaoqing County. As the Lord, Ouyang Shuo didn't sleep well last night. He kept thinking about the future plans of his territory. It was only after midnight that he fell asleep. Fortunately, Ouyang Shuo was strong and full of energy. Moreover, after cultivating the inner canon of the Yellow Arch, he could enter deep sleep. 1 hour of sleep was equivalent to 2 hours of normal sleep. If he wanted his subordinates to work hard, he, as the Lord, naturally couldn't slack off. The rooster outside the window had just crowed when Ouyang Shuo woke up on time. After washing up, Zhang Xian went to the courtyard and began his unshakable cultivation. He first practiced the 8 extremities fist twice to warm up his muscles. Then, he practiced the spear for half an hour. Ouyang Shuo had already caught a hint of inspiration from the similarities between the 8 extremities fist and the Yang family spear techniques. He believed that as long as he practiced diligently, it was only a matter of time before the two merged. After practicing the spear, Ouyang Shuo began to practice the sword. The killing sword he practiced was the same as before. There was not a trace of killing intent. Rather than saying that he was practicing the sword, it was more like a sword dance. But if one looked closely, they would notice something amazing. The leaves in the air would be cut into 2 by the invisible sword chi before they could even get close to the Scarlet Knight sword. There was no wind in the courtyard, but one could hear the sound of explosions as if they were being cut by knives. Whenever Ouyang Shuo practiced his swordsmanship, the guard in the courtyard would hide far away, not daring to approach. These iron-blooded guards who had gone through mountains of blades and seas of fire were extremely sensitive to the smell of blood and killing intent. At this moment, silence was better than sound. By the time Ouyang Shuo stopped cultivating, 2 hours had already passed. After returning to his room, he changed into a clean set of clothes and went to the dining hall to prepare for breakfast. When passing by the entrance of the dining hall, Ouyang Shuo said to Chen Dameng, who was on guard, "Dameng, go and inform Sir Shao. Tell him to come see me in the study." "Yes, sir." Chen Dameng was an abnormally burly man. He was 195 meters tall, and his chest and abdomen were bulging with strong muscles. His physique could even be compared to that of a ferocious beast in human form. Don't be fooled by his bulky physique and clumsy appearance. His 8 extremities fist should not be underestimated. Before Chen Dameng came to Shanghai City, he was a hunter who relied on hunting for a living. Other than his sickly younger brother, he had no other relatives. In order to treat his younger brother's illness, Chen Dameng often went deep into the mountains and fought with tigers, leopards, jackals, and wolves. In the local area, he could be considered a hero who could fight tigers in the mountains and capture dragons in the water. Later, he wandered to Shanghai City and entered the 8 extremities fist dojo, where he became the disciple of Lin Yu, a fist technique grandmaster. Unexpectedly, although this person looked dumb, his comprehension of fist techniques was extremely strong. His comprehension of fist techniques surprised even Lin Yu. Perhaps this was the so-called great wisdom appears to be stupidity. After observing Chen Dameng for 3 months, Lin Yu decided to accept him as his direct disciple and carefully teach him the essence of the 8 extremities fist. As a result, Chen Dameng's martial arts skills improved by leaps and bounds. Unlike Lin Yu's eldest disciple, Wang Feng, who was proficient in spear techniques, Chen Daming had a special liking for fist techniques. His pair of iron fists had killed countless heroes. Even a bull would fall to the ground with a single punch. Apart from fist techniques, the only weapon Chen Daming knew was a broadsword, a short one at that. Therefore, he could only fight on the ground. If he was on a horse, he would be a live target. After learning martial arts, Chen Daming chose to join the army like his senior brothers. After some training, Chen Daming successfully became a member of the Divine Martial Guards. Not long ago, Ouyang Shua took a liking to him and appointed him as the captain of the guards. Ouyang Shua's first captain of the guards was Wang Feng. However, Wang Feng was now a general who commanded 3,000 armored soldiers, and it was no longer suitable to keep him by Ouyang Shua's side. Therefore, Ouyang Shua chose another 200 people from the Divine Martial Guards to form a team of guards to guard Ouyang Shua 24 hours a day. Chen Daming was the captain of the guards and Ouyang Shua's personal bodyguard. In ancient times, those who were the bodyguards of a lord were all people with extraordinary martial arts skills. For example, Dian Wei and Su Chu under Cao Cao's camp, Zhao Yun under Liu Bei's camp, and so on. Naturally, Chen Daming couldn't be compared to Dian Wei and the others. But for now, it was enough. Ouyang Shua still couldn't bear to let a general of the army be his personal bodyguard. After all, he was a player. Even if there was an assassination, he could reincarnate. There was no need for a bodyguard. While Ouyang Shua was still having his meal, Xiao He, who was following behind Chen Daming, hurried over. Seeing that the Marquis was still eating, Xiao He simply waited outside the door. However, Ouyang Shua's senses were so sharp that he immediately noticed Xiao He's presence. "Lord Xiao, are you here? Please come in." The Marquis. When Xiao He heard this, he walked into the dining hall and bowed respectfully. For a monarch to receive his ministers in the dining hall, if word got out, he would probably be scolded to death by the Confucian scholars. Ouyang Shua didn't care. He said with a smile, "Lord Xiao, you came so quickly. I'm afraid you didn't have time to eat, did you? Daming, prepare a bowl and chopsticks for Lord Xiao." "Yes, sir." Chen Daming, who was outside the door, answered and went to prepare. During the expedition, Chen Daming was both Ouyang Shua's bodyguard and his housekeeper. Only Ouyang Shua could think of asking this burly man to serve him tea. Chen Daming didn't think much of it. Before he settled down in Shanghai City, he had been taking care of his brother by himself, so he wasn't unfamiliar with the daily chores. He knew how to wash clothes and cook. The ones who felt awkward were the ministers, such as Xiao He. Seeing this tall and mighty man handing over a set of chopsticks and bowl, the feeling of dislocation in his perception was extremely awkward. The small bowl and chopsticks were like toys in Chen Daming's hands. Xiao He was really worried that the burly man would crush the bowl and chopsticks if he used a little force. In ancient times, it was a supreme honor for a minister to be able to eat with the emperor. Xiao He was born in the wilderness and probably didn't pay much attention to Liu Bang in his early years. But facing the Marquis, he was still a little nervous. Although the Marquis was young, he had a mind of his own. He was full of vigor and authority. Ouyang Shua might be straightforward, but he didn't have the habit of talking at the dining table. It wasn't without reason that the ancient people followed the commandment of don't talk when eating and don't talk when sleeping. After breakfast, the two of them went to the study to discuss matters. At this time, Chen Daming had already prepared tea in advance, and his service was very thoughtful. The maids of the protectorate of the southern border were probably like this. Some of the newcomers couldn't even be compared to them. "Look at this." Ouyang Shua sat down at the table and picked up a document. On the cover of the document, the words "Top Secret" were written in red ink. Obviously, this was a document that was only allowed to be circulated within a small circle. Hearing that, Xiao He hurriedly stood up, took the document respectfully, and returned to his seat. This document had been drafted by Ouyang Shua last night. It was about the establishment of the Science, Education, Culture, and Health Bureau, as well as the reform of the territory's education, medical, and other areas. Xiao He was shocked when he finished reading it. Because it was a top-secret document, Ouyang Shua elaborated on the impact of the reform in the education field on the territory's future. He didn't try to hide it all. Ouyang Shua did this to make Xiao He realize the significance and importance of this reform. He didn't want a reform to be incomplete because of Xiao He's misunderstanding. It was precisely because of this that Xiao He trembled in fear after reading it. He had never heard of this reform of the Marquis. It was completely different from the usual practice of previous dynasties. At the same time, Xiao He was also a famous minister. He clearly understood the effect of this reform on the territory. Especially for the common people, this was simply a chance to completely change their fate. The Marquis is wise and loves the people like his own children. Such a benevolent ruler is truly a blessing for the people. Xiao He stood up again and respectfully bowed. Ouyang Shua nodded, looked at Xiao He, and said in a deep voice, "I want you to take the lead in establishing the Science, Education, Culture, and Health Bureau and lead this reform. Are you confident?" For the Marquis's plan, this humble subject is willing to die 10,000 times. Hearing this, Xiao He solemnly knelt down and swore an oath. For some reason, at that moment, Xiao He suddenly felt an irrepressible sense of lofty aspiration rise in his heart. There will always be a time when the wind blows in the waves, and I will hang the sail to help the vast sea. As a famous minister, Xiao He also had a great political ambition in his heart. For the world scholars, to achieve greatness was to help the world. The highest ideal of their life could be summed up in 4 sentences. To establish a heart for the world, to establish a life for the people, to continue learning for the saints, and to establish peace for all ages. This reform was to establish a life for the people. Xiao He felt like he was standing on the wave of the era. Perhaps in this ordinary study room, on such an ordinary morning, the famous minister of a generation, Xiao He, began to complete the most important and profound transformation in his life. Once he was reborn from the ashes and got rid of the barriers of the era, Xiao He would rise rapidly. In the future, in the real world, he would also be able to assist Ouyang Shua and achieve great things. Ouyang Shua was the only witness. To be continued. Chapter 480. P.S. Thank you to the book's #1 fan, Smoke and Fire Demon, for your 4th reward of 100,000 Chidian coins. Thank you for your support. I hereby add a new chapter to express my gratitude. Thank you. After sending Xiao He away, Ouyang Shua met with another person. He was Buddha He. After learning that Jade Buddha County had fallen, the Southern Alliance not only removed Buddha He from his position as the Alliance leader, but also expelled him from the Alliance. Right now, Buddha He was really a loner. His only value was the sovereignty of Jade Buddha County in his hands. After learning that Tianchuan County had fallen, Ouyang Shua had been looking for another central city among the territories in Lingnan Province. In the end, Ouyang Shua set his sights on Jade Buddha County. Apart from the needs of the previous war, the port of Jade Buddha County was also one of the important reasons Ouyang Shua favored it. The Jiaozhou port outside Jade Buddha County was located between the North Sea port and the Chuanzhou port. It could be used as a transfer station and an important supply point for fleets traveling between Shanghai City and Chuanzhou. Whether it was a merchant ship or a warship, the amount of fresh water and food they could carry was limited. If they brought too much, it would affect the loading capacity of the cargo. Therefore, usually long-distance voyages would choose a few temporary ports to stop at. The location of the Jiaozhou port was the most advantageous. With the Jiaozhou port, Ouyang Shua's previous plan to directly trade with Chuanzhou through the sea route would be possible, and the prerequisites for implementation would be met. That was why Ouyang Shua told Zhao Kuo not to break the stone tablet of Jade Buddha County. The bright sunlight shone on the courtyard. Flowers bloomed, and the place was full of vitality. Buddha He, who was escorted in by the guards, looked dispirited and dispirited. He was no longer as spirited and vigorous as before. He did not fit in with the vitality in the courtyard, perhaps because he was not used to the hot sunlight. Buddha He covered his forehead with his hand and closed his lifeless eyes. Ouyang Shua stood in the corridor and looked at Buddha He, who was walking toward him step by step. His heart was filled with emotion. The ending of this person today was enough to teach him a lesson. Lord He, it's an honor to meet you. Ouyang Shua greeted him. When Buddha he heard this, he raised his head and looked deeply at Ouyang Shua. A trace of spirit finally flashed in his eyes, and the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a self-deprecating smile. He said in a hoarse voice, Lord Wui, please don't laugh at me. The person in front of him was the culprit who destroyed his hegemony. Strangely, at this moment, Buddha he couldn't feel any resentment in his heart. It was as if all his emotions had dissipated along with his defeat. The man in front of him was about the same age as him and was already standing at the peak of the game world. There was once a moment when Buddha he was only an inch away from this step, but it was that slight difference that led to the difference between heaven and earth today. From this, it could be seen how difficult life was. Thinking of this, Buddha he's heart became increasingly desolate. Now, he just wanted to use his last bargaining chip to exchange for one last reward, then find a royal city, live in solitude, and spend the rest of his gaming life. The two opponents stood facing each other in the corridor, speechless for a while. Please. In the end, it was Ouyang Shua who broke the silence and led Buddha he to the study. Towards this person, towards such an opponent, Ouyang Shua still maintained the due respect. Buddha he didn't mind. He nodded and followed into the study. He sat down and said weakly, Let's not beat around the bush. Lord Wui, what are your conditions? Just say it. His voice was mixed with exhaustion and desolation that couldn't be concealed. When Ouyang Shua heard this, he knew that the speech he prepared previously was probably useless. He smiled and said, Lord, he is straightforward. Since that's the case, I won't beat around the bush. How about this? 20,000 gold coins. You transfer Jade Buddha County to someone I designate. What do you think? 50,000 gold coins. This time, Buddha he said it resolutely and decisively. Ouyang Shua frowned. This was a bit too much. He admitted that the true value of Jade Buddha County was definitely no less than 200,000 gold coins. But the problem was that Jade Buddha County was currently in Ouyang Shua's hands. To put it bluntly, what Ouyang Shua really wanted to buy was that teleportation formation. 30,000 gold coins, no haggling. Lord he, you should know that you don't have much room to bargain. In the end, Ouyang Shua decided to take a step back and increase the price by 10,000 gold coins. 30,000 gold coins was enough for Buddha he to live a carefree life in Royal City. If he also did some business, it would be very easy for him to live a prosperous life. Silence. There was a long silence. Buddha he closed his mouth and didn't say a word. It was obvious that he was making a final struggle. Even so, Ouyang Shua's attitude was as resolute as ever. At this time, feelings like sympathy and the like had already left him. All that was left was rationality and coldness. The difference of 20,000 gold coins was enough for Shanghai City to do many things. In addition to investing the remaining revenue in education, medical, and other reforms, Ouyang Shua also needed to invest more than 100,000 gold coins in the establishment of the Mountain Sea Guards. Therefore, Ouyang Shua didn't have much money left in his hands. He couldn't squander it as he pleased. Previously, Ouyang Shua had spent a lot of money to establish the Black Snake Guards. Now that he wanted to establish a higher level of the Mountain Sea Guards, the amount of money he needed to invest would naturally be even more terrifying. After all, it was not an easy task to feed a group of spies. The Battle of Zhaoqing and the temporary defection of Wulong County had already proved the value of intelligence agencies. Ouyang Shua's investment in the Black Snake Guards did not go to waste. It had tangible results. Just when Ouyang Shua was getting impatient, Buddha, he finally let go. I agree. Buddha, he raised his head and looked at Ouyang Shua again. Tell me, who do you want to transfer it to? Songwen. Songwen? Buddha, he was a little surprised. He had defeated Songwen before. That's right. Other than Songwen, who else was worthy of Ouyang Shua's trust among the lords and players without a territory? This was already Ouyang Shua's plan when Tianshuang County fell. And this was also Ouyang Shua's compensation to Songwon and the Song family. Okay, although Buddha he was surprised, he was no longer in the mood to explore the 8 trigrams. He immediately opened the control panel of the territory and selected the transfer option under the ownership of the territory. System notification. Player he, would you like to transfer the territory? Yes. System notification. Transfer request confirmed. Please specify the transferor. Friendly reminder. The transferor must be a lord. Song 1. System notification. Searching for Song 1. System notification. The transfer meets the requirements and can transfer. Would you like to transfer it now? Yes. System notification. Territory transfer successful. Player Jade Buddha County's Lord position will be automatically removed. At this point, Jade Buddha County officially changed owners. Buddha he took 30,000 gold coins and left through the teleportation formation in Wulong City. From then on, Ouyang Shua never heard any news about Buddha he. Originally, the Black Snake Guards wanted to follow Buddha he and assassinate him to take revenge. Ouyang Shua didn't agree. The reason was simple. Buddha he had expressed goodwill to the Bank of the Four Seas once in Tianchuan County. Ouyang Shua still had to return this favor. After the transfer, Songwen took the initiative to find Ouyang Shua. Before this, Songwen didn't know that Ouyang Shua had such plans. Suddenly receiving the system notification, Songwen was very surprised. He had mixed feelings in his heart. He didn't expect that after losing Tianchuan County, he would be in charge of the better Jade Buddha County. Of course, although they were both territories, Songwen knew that the nature of the two was completely different. To put it bluntly, Tianchuan County was the Song clan's private territory. Everything there was to be decided by the Song clan. No one could interfere with their life and death in the territory. Jade Buddha County was different. It belonged to the Mountain Sea territory. Or rather, it belonged to Ouyang Shua. Therefore, to put it bluntly, the current Songwen was a high-level employee. Rather than saying that Songwen was a lord, it was better to say that he was a city lord. His position was the same as Mulan used before. Moreover, because it wasn't a donated territory, Songwen's position wasn't as high as Mulan Yu's. When the two met, the atmosphere was a little awkward. The last time they met was during the Mountain Sea Alliance Conference in the first month. Even in the giant deer battlefield, the two didn't have much interaction. During the Mountain Sea Alliance Conference, as the Song family's successor, Songwen still had the confidence to speak to Ouyang Shua as an equal and call him a friend. Times had changed, and the rapid changes in the situation had completely changed the status of the two. The current Songwen felt somewhat pressured when facing Ouyang Shua, and he had to lower his status. Songwen knew that he had to change his understanding of his own role. The current Ouyang Shua was his lord. Since Songwen took the initiative to come, Ouyang Shua might as well tell him about the arrangements for Jade Buddha County in advance. Jade Buddha County was officially renamed Oceanwood City. Ouyang Shua changed the name because the name of Jade Buddha County carried a strong personal mark of Hefo. Songwen assumed the position of City Lord of Oceanwood City. Apart from that, Songwen didn't receive a noble title or land like Mulan Yu. The members of the Song family couldn't live in Oceanwood City. They had to move to Mountain Sea City. This could also be considered a warning to Song, won by Ouyang Shua. When Songwen achieved results that satisfied Ouyang Shua would bestow Songwen with a noble title and land. Apart from that, as the city lord, Songwen was only responsible for the administrative affairs of Oceanwood City and its affiliated cities. As for military affairs, Ouyang Shua had other arrangements, and Songwen couldn't interfere. Apart from the garrison division, Ouyang Shua also planned to set up a fleet in Oceanwood City. For the time being, it would be called the Jiaozhou Fleet's First Fleet. As for the commander of the fleet, Ouyang Shua chose Smoke Freak. Although the two fleets didn't have much of a chance to display their strength in the attack on Jade Buddha County, the conditions for Smoke Freak's promotion had already been met. Ouyang Shua naturally kept his word. This time, Smoke Freak had obtained a broad platform to display his talent. Whether he could lead the Jiaozhou Fleet's First Fleet to protect Oceanwood City was another test that Ouyang Shua gave him. To be continued. Chapter 481. After settling the matters in Jinhai City, Ouyang Shua was free for the time being. Reorganizing the army and reorganizing Zhaoqing County were carried out by both the military and the government at the same time. Even so, it would take at least a month before there would be any results. Taking advantage of this rare free time, Ouyang Shua prepared to set off and patrol Zhaoqing County. Although Zhaoqing County had been pacified, the people's hearts were still unsettled. The announcement posted by the government could not calm the people's fear. The lords had died in battle, and the territorial armies had either died in battle or surrendered. For the people of the various territories, the past month had been filled with the flames of war. It was truly a period of time that they could not bear to look back on. The entire Zhaoqing County was shrouded in fear and unease. The sky of Zhaoqing County was dark, filled with death and despair. According to the Black Snake Guards, some cities had already begun to lose their citizens. In the wilderness, population was the greatest strategic resource. Ouyang Shua was very distressed by the loss of population in Zhaoqing County. He could not sit back and watch the situation worsen. He instructed the Internal Affairs Department to strengthen the control measures while preparing to personally go into battle. At this time, Ouyang Shua naturally had to stand up and calm the people. Other than the Imperial Guards, the 1st Brigade of the Imperial Guards also accompanied him. Although Zhaoqing County had been pacified, Ouyang Shua still did not dare to take the risk alone. With the Imperial Guards accompanying him, he could only rest easy. Of course, on the night before he set off, Ouyang Shua booked the largest restaurant in Wulong City and held a grand thank you banquet to entertain the representatives of the aristocrats, merchants, and prestigious elders in the city, thanking them for their support of the Shanghai City Army. This thank you banquet was what Ouyang Shua had promised when he first entered Wulong County. Therefore, before he patrolled, he naturally had to fulfill his promise. He also used this opportunity to send Song-won and the others off. Tomorrow, Song-won would also go to Zhaoqing City to take up his post. Similarly, the people of the Song family would also be teleported to Shanghai City. Song Jia would be in charge of receiving them and preparing to settle down in Shanghai City. Ouyang Shua had already instructed Zhang Wenzhong to allocate a piece of land for the Song family in the West District. Not long ago, after the basic framework of Shanghai City's construction and the roads within the city were completed, the construction department conducted a redesign of Shanghai City's urban area. Before this, Shanghai City was divided into 5 big districts: Royal City, Inner City, Pool City, Friendship City, and Outer City. The size of each district was completely different and didn't match at all. This was especially true for the Outer City, which occupied 2/3 of the entire city. Its tentacles extended to every corner of the city. It could not be called the Outer City at all. As Shanghai City grew more prosperous, merchants and scholars came to visit. Shanghai City's status in China grew more and more important. Precisely because of this, it was imperative to plan the city reasonably. Otherwise, he would be laughed at by others. In the end, Shanghai City adopted the most classic method of dividing the city into 9 districts, and it was orderly and pleasing to the eye. The 9 major districts were located at the junction of the Friendship River and the Qiushui River, the central district of the entire city, the east, south, west, and north districts, as well as the northwest, northeast, southwest, and southeast districts. After the planning, the original Friendship City was now the North City District. The original Inner City was now the Southwest City District. The original Qiushui City was now the Southeast City District. In addition, the original Royal City and the Inner City were merged into one, and they were collectively known as Royal City. After the merger, the original residential and commercial districts of the Inner City would be moved to the West City District directly above Royal City. As the territory expanded, the original Royal City was too small and didn't match the status of the protectorate of the southern border. The expansion of Royal City was naturally imperative. Other than the planning of the districts, there was also a detailed division of the functions of each district. The Central District, where the waterways intersected and the choke point of traffic, was defined as the Dock District. The East City District and West City District on both sides were defined as the Commercial District, connected by waterways to the docks. The South City District below was defined as the Research District, where the military workshops and research bases were located. The original Friendship City District was now the North City District, and the original Choshue City District was now the Southeast City District. These two old districts were defined as the Residential District. Finally, the Northwest City District and the Northeast City District were defined as the Military District. The two divisions of the City Guard Regiment would each be stationed in a district to protect Shanghai City. This was why Ouyang Shuo had placed the Song family in the West City District. Song had taken up his post, but the Divine Martial Guard stationed in Seaport City couldn't return for the time being. They had to wait until the Garrison Division prepared for Sea-Suppressing City was fully organized, fully equipped, and ready for handover before they could return. Therefore, the Divine Martial Guards had to stay in Seaport City for a period of time. The first formation of the North Bay Fleet had already begun to return under Ouyang Shuo's orders. Beihai City was the gateway to Lianzhou County, so it couldn't be lost. The North Sea Bay Fleet could not leave for long periods of time. If there was a day when some pirates attacked, they would be in big trouble. As for the first formation of the Cliff Mountain Fleet, it was temporarily stationed at the Jiaozhou port. Kai Mao would instruct the fireworks freak to prepare for the formation of the Jiaozhou fleet, including the selection of soldiers and the remodeling of the port. The shipyard had already received the news and would arrange for a batch of warships to be sent to the port. Before the first formation of the Jiaozhou fleet was completed, the Cliff Mountain fleet, led by Kai Mao, wouldn't leave. Seaport City still had to rely on them for protection. Other than the Song family, Xiaohe also had to return to Shanghai City. Xiaohe didn't dare to delay Ouyang Shuo's orders. Xiaohe had already handed over the matters of Zhaoqing County to the 4 division chiefs. He had to return to Shanghai City to draft a reorganization plan for the Science, Education, Culture, and Health Bureau. After that, it would be submitted to Ouyang Shuo for approval. The next morning, Ouyang Shuo didn't bother anyone and quietly set off with his troops. His itinerary and patrol route were highly confidential. No one knew except for the Mountain Sea Guards and the Black Snake Guards. Ouyang Shuo patrolled the entire Zhaoqing County at the speed of 1 city a day. Everywhere he went, he would meet with the gentry and citizens. It was both to declare his sovereignty and to appease the people. Other than that, he would also inspect the local officials. After a long period of training, Ouyang Shuo's eyesight had become quite extraordinary. When he met a person, especially an official, he could get a general idea of the situation after a few words. Ouyang Shuo would also meet with some of the local officials who were supported by the people alone. Every day, Ouyang Shuo would write letters about the inspection and send them to Fan Zhongyan for his reference. There is no doubt that the officials that Ouyang Shuo liked would be put in an important position. Even so, Ouyang Shuo didn't make arbitrary decisions. He left the final decision to the Administrative Bureau. However, the Administrative Bureau would be especially meticulous in their inspection of the people that Ouyang Shuo specially mentioned. Ouyang Shuo was doing this to establish the authority of the Administrative Bureau in inspecting officials. The title of Marquis of Lian Province and Protector General of the Southern Region was a great deterrent to the people. Everywhere Ouyang Shuo went, the people would line the streets to welcome him. The gentry would fight to befriend him, and the merchants with a keen sense of smell would rush over like rats that had smelled honey. Ouyang Shuo could deal with all kinds of people with ease. He maintained the dignity of a lord and explained the governance of his territory to the people. During the conversation, Ouyang Shuo would also vaguely reveal the changes that were about to take place in the fields of education and medicine. It was tantamount to letting people know about Xiaohe's changes in advance. In this way, the people would have a concept in their hearts, and the resistance to the changes in the future would be much smaller. In addition, Ouyang Shuo also wanted to use this opportunity to incite the people to sincerely support the Protector General of the Southern Region. He wanted them to clearly see that their future life would be even better than under the rule of the Lord. The people cared about practical benefits. They would support whoever was good to them. When they heard that their children would be able to go to school for free in the future, that the government would help them when they fell sick, and that they wouldn't have to worry about medical expenses in the future, the crowd burst into cheers. Thus, Ouyang Shua's inspection was more effective than any announcement to calm the people. In addition to appeasing the people and inspecting the officials, Ouyang Shua also gave himself another task, which was to inspect the industries and resources of the various regions. The officials of the Finance Bureau were not as sensitive to new industries and unknown resources as Ouyang Shua. For example, when he was passing through the Ying mountain range, Ouyang Shua discovered a strange stone that the locals called Ying stone. Ying stone was formed from limestone after thousands of years of weathering and deposition. It was exquisitely carved and had the characteristics of being thin, wrinkled, leaky, and transparent. However, this kind of strange stone wasn't valued. On the same day, Ouyang Shua sent a letter to Yingyu, asking her to arrange for the Ministry of Industry to mine the Ying stone on a large scale to open up the market for strange stones. Whether it was used as a decoration or to be placed in a garden, Ying stone was in excellent existence. Once, when Ouyang Shua passed through a city, he heard the local people mention that someone had dug up a strange crop outside the city, but didn't know what it was. When Ouyang Shua heard the news, he immediately ordered people to bring the crop. When he took a look, it was a type of wild ginger. Although ginger had existed in ancient China, it wasn't widely eaten. It was no wonder that the local people didn't know about this kind of wild ginger. There was no doubt that Ouyang Shua had found a new specialty for the territory. There were many kinds of things. For the development of the territory, Ouyang Shua, the Lord, could be said to have put in a lot of effort. This inspection was also an opportunity for Ouyang Shua to broaden his horizons. As the saying goes, reading 10,000 books is not as good as walking 10,000 miles. Along the way, he crossed mountains, waded through rivers, passed through forests, and camped in the wilderness. In the wilderness, although there weren't many people, it had a different flavor. In the great desert, smoke rose and the sun set. This famous saying that described the great desert was also very suitable to describe the wilderness. Rough, wild, this was the most true portrayal of the wilderness. Because of this, Ouyang Shua missed the countless experiences of sleeping in the wilderness in his previous life. Now that he thought about it, it was also very precious. To be continued. Chapter 482, 20th of September, Shanghai City. While Ouyang Shua was patrolling Zhaoqing County, the Song family had temporarily settled down in Shanghai City. In order to compensate for the loss of Tianchuan County, Ouyang Shua had given the Song family a large plot of land. It was enough to build a large house, shops, and workshops, forming a relatively independent small neighborhood. Of course, the Song family had to pay for the construction costs themselves. With the establishment of various large chambers of commerce and the rise of the private economy, Shanghai City now had a large number of private construction teams, in addition to the official construction teams under the jurisdiction of the construction department. As long as these civilian teams were registered with the construction department and obtained legal qualifications, they would be able to undertake construction projects in Shanghai City. It could even be said that if the construction teams under the construction department were too busy for the official construction projects, the government would also pay for these private construction teams. The reason for this was to further stimulate the vitality of the private economy in the territory. The planned Shanghai City was too big. If only the official construction teams were to be relied on, who knew how long it would take to complete the construction. Because of this, the construction department came up with this idea. Ouyang Shua did not expect that under his guidance, construction companies in the real world would spontaneously emerge in the territory. This also showed that the commercial atmosphere in Shanghai City was very strong. Not to mention the construction teams. Even the School of Architecture of Southwest University China had begun to undertake construction design work. Some of the graduates were even preparing to set up a design team to undertake private projects. In the real world, the complete industrial chain of the construction industry was gradually taking shape in Shanghai City. In the future, the government would completely withdraw from the field of construction except for public construction projects. The functions of the construction department would also shift from the construction of the territory to the formulation of construction standards, supervision of construction, and overall planning of the city. The government could make a lot of money just by auctioning the land. In this way, the construction of the city walls, municipal roads, water supply and drainage, and other public works will be completely funded. It would no longer be a burden to the territory's finances. This was the magic of the market. Of course, to ensure the basic housing needs of the common people was the red line that Ouyang Shua had drawn. The land auctioned by the government could only be used for construction such as shops, workshops, and private mansions. In other words, the income from auctioning the land would basically be equal to the investment in public construction and would not become one of the main sources of revenue for the territory. The rise of the construction industry could be seen as a microcosm of the flourishing private economy in Shanghai City. Ouyang Shua's painstaking efforts were not wasted. The rise of private ownership did not just affect Shanghai City. The entire territory was affected by the radiation. It was reported that civilian construction teams had also begun to appear in other cities. Shanghai City was becoming the economic center of the territory. Basically, Shanghai City was the birthplace of all the new trends. The residents of Shanghai City, especially the older generation, were the generation that had been influenced by Ouyang Shua's ideology. Currently, more than half of the bosses of the civil construction teams in Shanghai City were from the first construction team that Ouyang Shua had established in the village stage. These wealthy people were the backbone of Ouyang Shua's rule. Southern Border Protectorate, Frost Cloud Hall. The Frost Cloud Palace was Song Jia's resting palace. It was located on the east side of the Everlasting Palace where Ouyang Shua resided. In the main hall, Song Jia was chatting with her father, Song Tianxiong. Song Jia was the happiest when the entire Song clan moved to Shanghai City. In this way, she could accompany by Ouyang Shua's side, and she didn't have to bear the pain of being separated from her family. It was killing two birds with one stone. Of course, the other people in the Song clan did not think so. The feeling of living under someone else's roof was definitely not good. This was especially so for those in the Song clan who knew Ouyang Shua's real identity. How could they have imagined that the poor kid in the real world would suddenly become a powerhouse in China? On the other hand, they could call the wind and summon the rain in the real world. In the end, he had to act according to a poor boy. The roles of the two sides had been completely reversed. No one would feel good about such a reversal. Song Tianxiong, on the other hand, did not feel this way. Even if he did, he would suppress it in the bottom of his heart. A real-life business tycoon like him had experienced countless storms and setbacks in his life. In comparison, the predicament he was in now was nothing. After settling down his clansmen, the establishment of the Song clan's Chamber of Commerce became Song Tianxiong's top priority. Before Ouyang Shua left Shanghai City, he had made 3 conditions for the Song clan's Chamber of Commerce that had yet to be established. Now, he had fulfilled all 3 of them. The first condition was a low-interest loan of 68,000 gold coins. Song Wen had already handed it over to Song Tianxiong when he was in Wulong City. Song Tianxiong had gone to the Bank of the Four Seas headquarters on the day he came to Shanghai City. Together with the funds from Tianshuang County's treasury, Song Tianxiong had more than 100,000 gold coins in his hands. Of course, if he wanted to establish a large-scale chamber of commerce, 100,000 gold coins was not a huge sum. The overall project budget of the Song family, which was in the planning stage, was 10,000 gold coins. The second condition was the exclusive contract for the territory's pearls. The Department of Commerce had already drafted it and handed it over to Song Jia for safekeeping. As long as Song Tianli signed the contract, it would immediately take effect. This contract would also become one of the main profits of the Song clan's Chamber of Commerce in the early stages. Ouyang Shua had once asked an official from the Department of Commerce to calculate that if the Song clan's Chamber of Commerce operated well, it would be able to earn at least 2,000 gold coins per month. The third condition was that the shipyard had already handed over the 10 merchant ships. All of them were docked at the docks in the central city of Shanghai City, waiting for Song Tianli to take over. According to the current market price, the total price of the 10 merchant ships would be 40,000 gold coins. After understanding this, Song Tianxiong could no longer apply for any special support from Ouyang Shua. Ouyang Shua had already done his best to take care of the Song clan. Even so, the Song Clan Chamber of Commerce was still struggling in Shanghai City. As a business tycoon in the real world, how could Song Tianxiong be willing to let the Song Clan's Chamber of Commerce be nameless in the game world? After all, the Chamber of Commerce's development was linked to its future authority. Needless to say, among the Song Clan's members, Song Jia's authority would definitely be extremely high in the future. Even if Ouyang Shua was not taken into account, with Song Jia's attainments in martial arts and her identity as the head of the Eastern Fen Sword faction, she could not be underestimated. The two brothers, Song Wen and Song Wu, had also integrated into the system of Shanghai City and sought an official position. If they worked hard in the future, their future would also be bright. Apart from that, the future of the other members of the Song clan was bleak. Without territory and living under someone else's roof, how could they have a chance to rise? Just to maintain a prosperous life, the monthly expenses of hundreds of clansmen was already a huge sum. If they only relied on the profits of the pearl business, they might not even be able to support their clansmen. Their only hope was the Song clan's Chamber of Commerce. Therefore, Song Tianxiong had to find a way to expand the Song clan's Chamber of Commerce. Since he had taken over the family's authority, he naturally had to take care of the family's responsibilities. This was Song Tianxiong's duty-bound responsibility. Since the fall of Tianchuan County, the old master's mood had been very low. As a son, Song Tianxiong really did not want to see his father depressed like this. That would be unfilial of him. Although the father and son had shed all pretense of cordiality for the sake of fighting for power, no matter what, he was still his father. The connection of blood could not be severed. Song Tianxiong came to the Frost Cloud Palace not to complain, but to see his daughter. Song Jia's home was the only comfort in Song Tianxiong's heart. Father, I heard from Wui that the fall of Tianchuan County was related to the Ruan clan. The father and daughter chatted for a while, and Song Jia carefully raised this sensitive topic. That's right. Song Tianxiong did not avoid in front of his daughter. Among the 3 representatives who had participated in the mediation, the Zhou clan had a close relationship with the Song clan, and they had no idea of the Ruan clan's sinister intentions. They were purely there to mediate, but they were used by others. The Zhou clan's territory was originally located in Zhaoqing County. After the Battle of Zhaoqing ended, because the Zhou clan's position had wavered, they were not forgiven by Ouyang Shua and completely disappeared. The decades of friendship between the Song clan and the Zhou clan could be considered to have come to an end. The Zhao clan was close to the Ruan clan and was also a member of the Southern Alliance. Although the Zhao clan was not completely clear about the Ruan clan's plan, they had a rough understanding of it. They went to Tianchuan County to cover for the Ruan clan. Therefore, the Zhao clan could be regarded as the Ruan clan's accomplice. The representatives of the 2 clans, including the old master of the Ruan clan, were detained by the Song clan and were now imprisoned in the Song clan's temporary residence in Shanghai City. As soon as the Battle of Zhaoqing ended, the Zhao clan and the Ruan clan had sent several negotiation letters to Song Tianxiong, expressing that they were willing to use the ransom money to redeem their clansmen. Ruan Ping, in particular, was the most anxious. After all, the Song clan had imprisoned his grandfather. Just this morning, Ruan Ping sent the 4th negotiation letter, raising the ransom to 20,000 gold coins in one go. Obviously, Ruan Ping was also under great pressure within the clan. After all, the old master of the Ruan clan had followed Ruan Ping's plan and walked right into the tiger's mouth. After Song Jia heard the whole story, a trace of disdain flashed across her face, and she said, "Father, in my opinion, we should raise the ransom to 30,000 gold coins and let them go. We don't want to let them stay in Shanghai City and sully the land here." It was not that Song Jia did not hold a grudge, but she did not want to be entangled with the two clans over the hostage issue, because it was meaningless. As for the Ruan clan and the Zhao clan, Wu Yi would deal with them sooner or later. When that time came, he would definitely make them bankrupt. There was no point in squabbling now. All right. Song Tianxiong also felt that there was no need to continue. To be continued. Chapter 483. Frost Cloud Palace. After talking about the Ruan family, Song Jia took the initiative to bring up the Song Enterprise Chamber of Commerce. She still wanted to help. Father, what products are we going to sell? I don't have a clue. Speaking of this, Song Tianxiong felt a headache coming on and frowned. The game wasn't like reality. The types of products that could be sold were limited. But any special products either required relevant technical manuals or formed technical barriers, such as cosmetics and stationery, or the raw materials market was monopolized by the big chambers of commerce, such as jade and jewelry. It wasn't easy to carve out a bloody path in the business world. On the other hand, a guild with a lifestyle profession like a thread directly avoided competition with the NPC chambers of commerce and targeted the market at adventurer players, making a lot of money. Song Jia frowned and said uncertainly, I've always heard Wu Yi say that when we players come to the game world, it's actually equivalent to a group transmigrating to an ancient society. This is also why the NPCs call us Inhumans. Do you think it's possible to explore some new product channels from this angle? Song Tianxiong heard this and found it funny. His precious daughter had been strong-willed and opinionated since she was young. Ever since she followed Ouyang Shua, he didn't know what that brat had fed her. The two of them had only been together for a short period of time, but she was already talking without clothes. A good girl had been led astray by that brat Ouyang. Although it was funny, Song Tianxiong's eyes lit up at his daughter's new idea. However, he was an orthodox businessman and didn't know much about the popular transmigration novels on the internet. Tell me, what's a new idea? Seeing that her father was tempted, Song Jia became interested and chattered. According to the plot of transmigration novels, if modern people want to become rich after transmigrating to ancient times, they have to invent things that didn't exist in ancient times, such as glass, perfume, soap, and so on. These are all huge profits and would definitely be very popular in ancient times. Perfume? Soap? Song Tianxiong was dumbfounded. In his mind, these things were really out of place with the game's ancient background. Will this work? Song Tianxiong expressed his doubt. Yes. Song Jia, on the other hand, had a matter-of-fact expression on her face. 200 years ago, there was a novel called The Best Servant on the internet. It was extremely popular. The male protagonist in the novel started his business by selling perfume and soap. Song Tianxiong continued to be confused. After thinking for a long time, he hesitantly said, Those are all novels. Do you know how difficult it was to make things like perfume and soap in ancient times? Father, you're out of luck. Don't forget, we can log into the forum at any time and search for relevant information. We are much more powerful than those people from other worlds. Besides, these daily necessities are not restricted by the technology tree. Gaia will not restrict our research and development. Technology tree. Song Jia facepalmed. She realized that her father's understanding of games was still too low. Of course, Song Jia might have forgotten that these ideals were instilled into her by Ouyang Shua. Helpless, Song Jia could only explain the relevant settings of the technology tree to Song Tianxiong. Hearing this, Song Tianxiong's eyes gradually brightened. He was a businessman. Although he didn't necessarily understand technology, he was still very sensitive to the reaction of products in the market. Just as Song Jia said, if they really developed the perfume and soap, it would definitely be a huge profit. All right, let's take a gamble. Song Tianxiong slammed the table and stood up. He was a businessman and had always been adventurous. There was finally a direction for the future of the Chamber of Commerce. Song Tianxiong's mood also became much more cheerful. Seeing this, Song Jia smiled. Just as Song Jia was chatting with her father, Shanghai City welcomed another special guest. It was a beautiful woman with bright eyes and white teeth. She was dressed in white and led a white horse. She had an unparalleled temperament. Behind the woman in white was another woman. She was dressed like a maid and also had a lovely appearance. "Miss, is this the Shanghai city where Sir became an official? It's so lively. It's not any worse than Xinying City." The pretty maid was very lively. She looked at the endless flow of people on the street and could not help but exclaim. The woman in white did not reply. She only used her eyes to look at the shops on both sides of the street. She was a businessman and had a unique sense of smell when it came to all kinds of goods. In just a short period of observation, the rich commercial atmosphere in Shanghai City made the woman in white exclaim. The master and maid, especially the woman in white, were the most beautiful people in Shanghai City. It was impossible for the two of them to not attract attention as they walked on the street. As soon as they entered the city, they were actually watched by the mountain sea guards. Shun Buhai was in charge of establishing the mountain sea guards. The first order that Ouyang Shua gave was to order the mountain sea guards to firmly control Shanghai City, the center of the territory. According to Ouyang Shua, no matter what happened in Shanghai City, it should not escape the eyes and ears of the mountain sea guards. More than 30% of the funds that Ouyang Shua allocated to the mountain sea guards were used to establish Shanghai City's intelligence network. Through the Marquee Mansion system, Zissou had established a network of eyes and ears that was also integrated into the mountain sea guards. Therefore, in a short period of time, the entire Shanghai City was under surveillance by the mountain sea guards. The inconspicuous peddlers at the city gates, the owners of the restaurants, the porters at the docks, the maids of the various mansions, and so on. Everywhere they looked, they could hear the secret conversations of the mountain sea guards. No matter which stranger entered the city, they would be monitored by the mountain sea guards. The master and maid were so eye-catching that they became the main targets of the mountain sea guard surveillance. The pretty maid suddenly approached the lady in white and whispered, "Miss, someone is watching us." Unexpectedly, the little girl looked innocent on the outside, but in reality, she was very perceptive. She did not seem like an ordinary person. The lady in white did not bat an eyelid. She smiled and said, "Don't worry." The two of them walked and strolled along the way. They entered the city from the side gate of the North City, passed through the North City, and toured the Middle City. Then, they took a detour and turned to the West City. Their final destination was Royal City, which was located in the southwest corner. They walked for the whole morning. At noon, the master and maid arrived at the main gate of Royal City, but they were stopped by the guards. Royal City was now a restricted area for ordinary people. Ordinary people were not allowed to enter. For this reason, the Imperial Guard Division, which was responsible for protecting Royal City, had specially formed a city defense brigade to guard Royal City. Royal City is a restricted area. Unauthorized persons are not allowed to enter. "Why are you so fierce?" The pretty maid was not afraid of the guards at the gate. Obviously, the master and maid's identity was extraordinary. They were people who had seen the world. The lady in white stopped the maid and said gently, "Brother guard, please inform the guards that I am Bai Shui, and I am here to visit Wei Yang." The guard saw that the lady in white had an extraordinary bearing. He did not dare to neglect her and said, "Are you the head of the Internal Affairs Division, Wei Yang, Lord Wei?" "Yes." "Who are you to Lord Wei?" "It is my duty. Please do not blame me. Mississippi, being a guard was also a tough job. If he was tough, he would easily offend the nobles. If he was kind, he would be reprimanded by his superior if he was fooled. Listen up, my Mrs. Sir's wife." The pretty girl could not help but answer. The guard did not dare to neglect her. "Please wait a moment." He turned and left. In less than 20 minutes, Wei Yang followed behind the guard and hurriedly ran over. That's right, he ran. The head of the Internal Affairs Division was usually very serious and had a murderous aura around him. At the same time, Wei Yang also paid great attention to etiquette. He had never heard of running on the street, but at this moment, it was very different. Wei Yang was immersed in an inexplicable excitement and could not extricate himself. When Wei Yang saw Bai Shui, the entire world seemed to come to a standstill. In Wei Yang's eyes, there was nothing but the slender and elegant lady in white. At this moment, Wei Yang felt that he had the whole world. Little sister. It was just a simple call, but it was filled with so much emotion. Wei Yang choked with sobs. His eyes turned red, and he could no longer control himself and ran away. This scene caused the guards to be extremely astonished. Little sister. Wei Yang staggered to Bai Shui. He spoke incoherently and stood uneasily like a child. Husband. The white-robed woman smiled. This smile was like a lotus blooming, and the earth tilted. This smile was like the spring snow, and the sky fell. This smile caused Wei Yang's heart to be filled with sunshine, warmth, and happiness. Little sister. Wei Yang could no longer hold it in. He took a step forward and pulled the beauty into his arms. This pair of lovers who had been separated for 1,000 years had finally reunited after going through hardships. This scene was enough to captivate anyone who saw it. Even a pretty maidservant could not help but have her eyes turn red. Sir. The pretty maidservant came forward and bowed to Wei Yang. Lady Mei. Wei Yang let go of Bai Shui and smiled warmly. From this moment onwards, that elegant young master and modest gentleman appeared in the world again. He suddenly became flesh and blood and was no longer the cold and hollow head of the Internal Affairs Division. Little sister, Lady Mei, let's go. Let's talk inside the residence. Wei Yang calmed his emotions and secretly wiped away the tears at the corner of his eyes as he led the way. Everyone, who is Bai Shui? Bai Shui was the daughter of Shang Baigui of the Wei Kingdom during the Warring States period. Not only did she have peerless beauty, but she also had rare wisdom and courage. Although she was the owner of the Bai clan merchant house, she was not bound by money and fame. She had always supported Wei Yang and had a huge impact on his life. She was truly an extraordinary woman during the Warring States period. The Bai clan merchant house that she ran was not only a merchant house, but also an independent intelligence network with contacts all over the world. After joining the wilderness, the Bai clan merchant house also appeared in Xianyang City. Other than reuniting with Wei Yang, Bai Shui also brought clues about family. This could be considered a special gift from Bai Shui to Shanghai City. Ouyang Shuo received this news during his patrol and immediately ordered the Black Snake Guards to search for family. To be continued. Chapter 484. Bai Shui's connection with Fan Li was through her father, Bai Gui. Bai Gui was Gigazi's disciple and was known as the Shang ancestor. Fan Li was known as the Shang Saint. Although the two were not from the same era, they were both representatives of the 100 schools of thought. After appearing in the wilderness, they naturally kept in touch with each other. In the previous Zhengming assembly, no one from the Shang clan participated. This was because doing business was considered a lowly occupation in ancient times and was not accepted by the mainstream. Even if they participated, they would only be humiliating themselves. Of course, Bai Gui and Fan Li were different. They were not only merchants, but also politicians and military experts. Especially Fan Li. He had helped King Yu Go-Jin destroy the Wu Kingdom before retreating and turning to business. Bai Shui also learned from her father that Fan Li was with Shi Shi. This immortal couple was living in seclusion in a scenic spot in Jiangnan. Bai Shui did not know the specific location. Because of this, Ouyang Shuo ordered the Black Snake Guard to track Fan Li's whereabouts. Shanghai City, Wei Mansion. Wei Yang was still immersed in the joy of reuniting with a beauty. He was in high spirits, and the wrinkles on his forehead had disappeared. Rumors said that the king of Shang was cold and heartless, but in reality, Wei Yang was a modest gentleman who did not care about trifles. Otherwise, he would not have made Bai Shui, an extraordinary woman, fall in love with him. Little sister, why don't you stay here for the night? Although Shanghai City is not as good as Xianyang City now, it will surpass Xianyang in the future. The Bai Clan Trading Company has unlimited business opportunities in Shanghai City. Although Xianyang City was built by Wei Yang in history. But at this moment, Wei Yang's mind was no longer connected to the Qin Kingdom. He was wholeheartedly focused on the internal affairs of Shanghai City, granting the Internal Affairs Bureau the power to investigate cases, compiling the territory's laws, and expanding the bailiffs were all things worth noting. How could Wei Yang not do his best for the Marquis kindness? Not only Wei Yang, But Han Feizi and the other legalists were also full of energy. Bai Shui's eyes were filled with tenderness. "Since I'm here, I naturally have to accompany my husband." Bai Shui smiled faintly. "There's only one condition. If the Bai family trading company wants to establish itself in Shanghai City, we'll need you to deal with it." Wei Yang was overjoyed. He immediately patted his chest and said, "No problem." As a matter of fact, Shanghai City didn't have many restrictions on the establishment of the Chamber of Commerce. The open business environment would probably be like a fish in water to the Bai clan trading company. For Bai Shui to be able to take over the Bai family trading company from her father's hands, how could she be easy to deal with? Perhaps, from today onwards, the number of merchant guilds under the Lord's direct line would increase to 3. The Chui Clan Merchant Company, the Song Clan Merchant Company, and the Bai Clan Merchant Company formed the carriages of 3 merchant companies that moved neck and neck. Bai Shui's arrival would have a profound effect on Shanghai City, and no one could say for sure. However, outside of Shanghai City, the entire China region was also undergoing profound changes. 25th of September, Southern Alliance finally made a big move after half a month of surrendering. Facing the threat of Shanghai City, the Southern Alliance underwent a transformation. This revolution would not only affect the structure of Lingnan province, but it would also have a profound impact on the entire China region. On that day, Southern Alliance officially announced to the public that it would change its name to Lingnan City-States with a Shared Destiny Community Alliance, or Lingnan City-States for short. Thus, it also announced that the city-state system had officially taken root in the China region. Compared to the current Lord's Alliance, the city-state system had too many differences. Firstly, it had a concrete mechanism to discuss matters. With the unanimous agreement of the members, Lingnan City-States formed a joint conference of the Lords. All the important decisions of the city-state would be made by the joint conference of the Lords. The joint conference would set up a rotating chairman, which would be rotated every half a year. The rotating chairman was in charge of the joint conference and was also the symbol of the city-state's external relations. The first rotating chairman was Ruan Ping. The lords of the various territories were all members of the joint conference and had the right to speak and vote. For every topic, as long as the number of people who voted for it reached 60% or above, the topic would be considered passed. In other words, compared to the complete independence of the alliance, the members of the city-state were half independent and half cooperative in terms of internal affairs. The internal affairs of the territories were completely independent, and the joint conference would not interfere with them. The external decisions would be handed over to the joint conference of the lords. In other words, from today onwards, the entire 3 counties of the Lingnan province and more than 60 territories would be a whole, the Lingnan city-state. Second, economic integration. Compared to the limited and fragmented cooperation of the alliance, the economic cooperation of the Lingnan city-state would be further advanced. First of all, the lords would jointly invest in the establishment of the Lingnan Bank. The future Lingnan Bank would be the engine for the economic takeoff of the Lingnan city-state. Every member of the city-state could apply for a loan from the Lingnan Bank for the construction of the territory. Of course, all of this had a price. The city-state stipulated that in order to ensure the capital reserves of the Lingnan Bank, the banks of the various territories must unconditionally integrate into the Lingnan Bank and become its branches. As a result, the savings funds of the entire 3 counties of the Lingnan, more than 60 territories, and millions of civilians would flow into the Lingnan Bank. The Lingnan Bank suddenly rose as a new force and became the second largest bank established by players under the Four Seas Bank. In addition to the banks, the members of the city-state would also carry out more frequent and free trade. The trade between the territories would implement a zero-tariff policy. In addition, the merchants, craftsmen, and other people of the various territories could move freely. As a result, the economy of the city-state would be greatly stimulated. The economic integration of the city-state was no longer a fantasy. Ouyang Shua had a deeper understanding of this. That was because at the end of the year, the 3rd update of the system would have a profound impact on the trade between the territories. The Lingnan city-state unintentionally took a step ahead. Third, military integration. In addition to the independent garrisons of the various territories, the Lingnan city-state also planned to form a permanent alliance army. The size of the alliance army was initially set at 100,000 people. In the future, the possibility of expanding the army again could not be ruled out. The military expenses of the alliance army would be borne by all members. The formed alliance army would be equipped with the best weapons and equipment and undergo the most rigorous training. According to Ruan Ping, the alliance army was a trump card, an elite division. Similarly, the alliance army would also set up a commander of the alliance army. The specific commander of the alliance army was kept secret by the Lingnan city-state and was not announced to the public. Although the commander of the alliance army was not announced, Ruan Ping announced the location of the alliance army in a high-profile manner. The 100,000 alliance army was stationed at the border between Jiaozhou County and Zhaoqing County, responsible for the security of the city-state. It was obvious who he was guarding against and who he was warning. These 3 points alone were enough to prove that the Lingnan city-state had launched an extremely close cooperation in politics, economy, and military. This cooperation and the cooperation between the alliance were two totally different concepts. In addition to these 3 major cooperation points, there were also hundreds of other cooperation points between the members of the city-state. It was just that the Lingnan city-state had just been established, and the content of the cooperation had not yet been put into place. In addition to the above benefits, there is another great benefit of establishing a city-state, which was to fundamentally eliminate the existence of traitors. The temporary defection of Wulong County during the Battle of Zhaoqing had an impact on the war. Learning from the lesson of that battle, the Lingnan city-state had carried out strict precautions at the beginning of its establishment. This included no longer allowing members to form alliances, and the teleportation authority of the various territories had to be monitored by the Joint Conference of Lords, etc. Any territory that disagreed would be regarded as an enemy of the city-state. With this alone, Ruan Ping eliminated the unstable factors in the 3 counties of Lingnan. The future Lingnan city-state would be a community with a common will and a common destiny. No matter who it would no longer be able to destroy the city-state from within. There was no doubt that the renamed Lingnan city-state would occupy 3 counties, and it would become a force that could not be ignored in China. The road to the east of Shanghai City would also be full of difficulties in the future. Fortunately, Ouyang Shuo had buried a nail in the door of Jiaozhou County. With the establishment of the Lingnan city-state, the strategic position of the sea-suppressing city became more and more important. Ouyang Shuo was already considering whether to increase the number of troops in sea-suppressing city again. The establishment of the Lingnan city-state had a huge impact on the major forces in China. Any lord with a little brain knew the background and original intention of the establishment of the Lingnan city-state. Although the other local alliances had not yet encountered a threat like Shanghai City, who could guarantee that such a threat would not appear in the future? At the very least, Di Chun and the others were definitely a huge threat. Under the watchful eyes of the giants, the regional alliances in the future would definitely develop closer cooperation. The establishment of a city-state was undoubtedly a very good choice. In this way, they could truly compete with the giants. For example, the Rosy Cloud Alliance in Xiangnan Province already had this intention. After Shanghai City occupied Zhaoqing County, they could attack the Lingnan city-state. In the east and continue to the north, they could directly attack the Xiangnan Province. Therefore, the Rosy Cloud Alliance had the internal motivation to establish a city-state. As for when it would be established and whether it could be successfully established, it would depend on how much influence the leader of the Rosy Cloud Alliance, the south of the Rosy Cloud Alliance, could exert in the alliance. After all, the city-state system had its advantages and disadvantages. First of all, as long as they joined the city-state, the Lord could no longer do as he pleased. Every word and action would be restricted by the city-state, and they would lose their independent diplomatic rights. Apart from the regional alliances, Even alliances like the Shanghai Alliance and the Yinhuang Alliance would be affected by the city-state system. Although the alliance could not cooperate like the city-state system, it was already urgent to start closer cooperation than it was now. Otherwise, they would be abandoned by the mainstream. The era of the city-state was quietly coming. To be continued. Chapter 485. Lingnan city-state was not the only one that had quietly changed the structure of the China region. It was winter at the end of the second year of Gaia, and the flames of war were everywhere. After the end of the Battle of Giant Deer, all the territories in the China region were experiencing a change of power. The victors of the war wanted to expand their achievements and sharpen their weapons. The losers, in order to protect themselves, resorted to militaristic means. The flames of war were burning, and blood was boiling. The blood-red sky shrouded the land of China and did not dissipate for a long time. During this time, south of Rosy Cloud City, drifting illusoriously a city, Black Lion City, and Fengqingyang Swordsman City were all promoted to first-class counties. The number of counties in the China region had already reached 12. In the next stage, Baian's Heartstone County and Kill Ripper's Azura County would also be promoted. The China region was not far from triggering the condition of 15 counties in the fifth battle. The local tyrants naturally sharpened their weapons to fight for the last promotion. After all, if they could be promoted to a county city before the battle began, it would have a huge impact on the following battles. No one was willing to fall behind. The entire wilderness was in an inexplicable state of restlessness. This was especially so for the northern region of the China region, because they did not have much time left. It seemed that in at most 2 months, the cold wave would sweep across the entire northern region. At that time, it would be difficult to even get the soldiers to carry out normal training, let alone send troops to war. It was a world of ice and snow outside, and the cold wind was biting cold. The entire north would be completely silent and begin to pass the winter. Therefore, the northern lords had to achieve their strategic goals before the arrival of the cold wave. In fact, the lords were not the only ones who were restless in the wilderness. Other than the Yellow Turban Army that had already been destroyed, the remaining 3 rebel army groups were ready to make a move. On the 1st of October, after Qin Sheng led his troops to conquer all the territories in the Central Plains province, except for Luoyang, he announced the establishment of a country and officially established the Zhangchu regime in Qin County. As soon as the Zhangchu regime was established, it became the largest force in the China region. Even Shanghai City, which occupied 4 prefectures, paled in comparison in terms of territory. On the day that Zhangchu was established, the lords of the Central Plains region shouted in unison, "The wolf is here." After Qin Sheng established his empire, he didn't attack the royal capital, Luoyang, in a fit of passion. He didn't even have any plans to fight across provinces. Qin Sheng's top priority was to allow the people to rest and consolidate his rule. The reincarnated Qin Sheng was no longer the peasant who was used as a tool by others. The first leader of a peasant uprising in China's history was walking on the road to becoming an emperor, and there was no turning back. As the saying goes, the bird that sticks out gets shot. The territory of Zhangchu's regime was too big, and it was surrounded by enemies on all sides. To the north was Feng Qiuhuang's Luo Feng City. To the west was Li Linghuan's Luo Yi City. To the south was Lord Chuanshin's Danyang City. To the east was Xiang Yu's West Chu regime. When Zhangchu's regime was established, it was time for a pack of wolves to divide the cake. Almost on the same day, Fallen Phoenix City, Fallen Leaves City, and Pilsun City began to organize their neighboring territories, forming 3 allied armies. They all dispatched their troops to the border area. An unprecedented war was about to break out in the Central Plains. The funny thing was that this time, the Mountain and Sea Alliance and the Yellow Emperor Alliance had become allies. Qin Sheng obviously didn't want to be captured without putting up a fight. In order to break out of this predicament, he made a decisive move. On the day of the establishment of his empire, Qin Sheng also announced that Zhangchu's regime had officially formed an alliance with West Chu in the east. After entering the wilderness, The West Chu regime, led by Xiang Yu, headed straight for Ludong province, north of Pengcheng. As for the nearby Central Plains province, he didn't even touch it. Perhaps the two forces had formed a tacit understanding as early as that time. After all, Xiang Yu and the others had been under Chen Sheng's command in the early years. In the wilderness where danger lurked in every corner, the two regimes chose to trust each other. The alliance between the two Chu regimes caused the Central Plains to become even more complicated and confusing. In this way, Chen Sheng not only eliminated the threat from the east, but also obtained Xiang Yu's assistance. Chen Sheng's alliance with Xiang Yu immediately made up for the embarrassing situation of having no generals under him. Whether it was Xiang Yu himself, his grandfather Xiang Yin, uncle Xiang Liang, or even Xiang Zhuang, they were all rare generals. Sure enough, on the day of the alliance, the old General Xiang Yin set off from Pengcheng to Chun County to help Chen Sheng organize the army and set up a defensive line to deal with the invasion of the mutant army. Chen Sheng even boldly appointed Xiang Yin as the general of Jiangchu. This also meant that the cooperation between the two Chu regimes was extremely close. Jiangchu against 3 mutant armies. In the north, Feng Xiuhuang organized the Mountain and Sea Alliance Phoenix Alliance and formed an army of 150,000. In the west, Piao Linghuan organized an army of 100,000. In the south, Lord Chunxin organized an army of 180,000. Of course, Jiangchu was not a pushover. With the territory of a province, the Jiangchu regime's total military strength reached more than 500,000, close to 600,000. The total military strength of both sides was close to 1 million. Needless to say, this battle would be the largest and most widespread battle in the main plain since the start of the game. In the Central Plains, a total of 5 provinces were involved in this war. There were even rumors that Di Chun, who was in the capital, intended to form another army to attack Jiangchu in an attempt to get a share of the loot. The Central Plains province was about to be divided by the various powers. Of course, there was also the possibility that the allied armies would return in defeat. After all, the various armies were not friends. Not to mention that Feng Xiuhuang and Lord Chunxin were originally in different camps. Even the Yin-Huang alliance was at odds with each other. Lord Chunxin and Di Chun were mortal enemies. Lord Chunxin and Piao Linghuan were mortal enemies. The 3 armies were not united and would definitely fight for themselves. It was still unknown who would emerge victorious. The entire Central Plains was about to be engulfed in the flames of war. And all of this seemed to have nothing to do with Ouyang Shua or Shanghai City. In fact, that was not the case. The entire China region was a huge chessboard. The slightest ripple in every place would eventually be transmitted and radiated to the entire China. Moreover, the Central Plains had always been the place where dynasties rejuvenated. Once the Central Plains was in chaos, the entire China region would not be able to live in peace. How could the 4 rebel armies arranged by Gaia be ordinary people? There was a deeper meaning to this. Needless to say, Feng Xiuhuang, one of the pillars of the Shanghai Alliance, was also involved. Ouyang Shua was not worried about Feng Xiuhuang on the battlefield. What he was worried about was the Yin-Huang Alliance's schemes. Therefore, Ouyang Shua had already instructed the Black Snake Guards to closely monitor the Central Plains. At the same time, he shared the relevant information with Feng Xiuhuang. The members of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas also opened the door to Fallen Phoenix City in terms of weapons and equipment. Using Ouyang Shua as an example, even though Shanghai City was reorganizing its army and lacked weapons and equipment, Ouyang Shua still prioritized selling 10,000 divine armed crossbows to Feng Xiuhuang. Ouyang Shua even promised that if the situation was bad, Shanghai City would personally send reinforcements. It was foreseeable that the Yin-Huang alliance would have a corresponding negotiation mechanism. At the very least, Xiongba would not ignore Piao Linghuan and would support him with all his might. Therefore, the war in the Central Plains had dragged the 2 largest alliances in the China region into it. With this as a node, the entire China region situation would be affected. Perhaps because he felt that the world was not chaotic enough, Huang Chao, who had kept a low profile for a period of time, once again appeared in front of the world. In these few months, the defeated Huang Chao had once again established a foothold in the southern Anhui province. Huang Chao, who was unwilling to be left out, followed Chun Sheng and declared himself a king. He officially established Daqi's political power in Anqing, south of the southern Anhui province. From then on, the three rebel armies established their own countries and declared themselves kings. After Huang Chao established Daqi's political power, his ambition grew once again. He immediately announced that he was going on a northern expedition to recover his lost territory and take over the entire southern Anhui province. Once the Great Qi Empire made its move, the hearts of the surrounding provinces would be affected. The Jiangchuan province in the south, the Jiangnan province in the southeast, the Jianya district in the northeast, and even the West Shu regime in the north all moved in response. For a period of time, the southeast region was also filled with the smoke of war. In order to prevent Daqi from becoming too big, the three provinces also began to mobilize before the war. In the south, the siege lions began to organize the allied forces in the Jiangchuan province. In the east, Xiongba and the war wolves were sharpening their knives, preparing to form a huge allied army to attack Daqi. In this war, the war wolves and the others were determined to completely annihilate Daqi. Otherwise, once a peasant rebel army like this fled, it would be too easy for them to rise again. This time, it seemed that Di Chen's previous decision to lead the allied army to annihilate the Yellow Turban was indeed a wise decision. Amidst the chaos of war, only the capital still maintained a rare peace. Apart from Huang Chao's rebel army, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom in the southwest was also ready to move. After completing the digestion of Guilin County, Anjunnan County, Hongshochuan would certainly expand outwards again. In this way, the northern Sichuan province in the north and the Yunnan province in the west were all within his attack range. For a period of time, with the three rebel armies as the center, the entire land of the China region was turned upside down. There was no longer a place of peace. The momentum of the peasant rebellion, after 10 months of operation, reached its peak in the wilderness. The year of rebellion and year of war completely erupted in the last 2 months of the second year of Gaia. These last 2 months would determine the fate of the China region for a period of time. If the three rebel armies could be extinguished, the strength of the lords of the China region would rise to another level. On the contrary, if the three rebel governments were allowed to resist, there would no longer be a day of peace in the wilderness in the future. And this was Gaia's test for the lords. Whoever could stand out in this test would receive extra attention from Gaia. To be continued. Chapter 486. The China region was in flames, and the rest of the world was not peaceful either. With the arrival of Gaia's third year, the entire world was undergoing profound changes. Some small countries had limited land, limited number of players, and limited citizens. After 2 years of cooperation, the overlords of the countries gradually began to rise, integrating the power of the country and completing the unification ahead of time. The situation of the entire region began to become clear. The most obvious was the European continent. Norway, Iceland, Italy, Portugal, the Netherlands, and other countries had completed unification. Germany, England, France, Sweden, and other countries were also close to unification. Before Ouyang Shua's rebirth, even the entire European continent had the tendency to form a unified alliance. The European Union had always been a super region that could not be ignored in the world. The only ones who could keep these great lords in check were the natives. Similar to the peasant rebellion in the China region, Gaia, in other countries, according to the history of each country, correspondingly put in the indigenous forces to compete with the player lords. In short, Gaia would not let the lords have it easy. The wilderness was always a world where danger and opportunity coexisted. In comparison, China had a long history and had ample choices when it came to setting up wars and indigenous forces. It was different for other countries. Some countries had nothing to write home about in their ancient times. It could even be said that some modern countries had no history at all. Gaia had a solution for this. Since there were no records in official history, Gaia would draw materials from unofficial history, novels, and even movies and TV series to create a war plane for the lords to fight in. If even movies and TV series were lacking, Gaia could only use her powerful calculation and deduction abilities to directly create a plane in the era of cold weapons. In short, Gaia would be relatively fair to each country. That's right, it was relatively fair. Let's take China as an example. China had a long history and produced many talented people. The relevant records were also more detailed. Moreover, these famous wars and countless famous historical figures have been repeatedly filmed for more than 200 years. The material was extremely rich. Therefore, when creating these characters, Gaia could give them higher AI. On the contrary, the temporarily created characters by Gaia naturally had lower AI values. This was the difference in the cultural heritage of each country. No one could complain. In comparison, the European continent was more special. In the history of Europe, there had been a few great empires that spanned across the entire continent. Among them, the largest empire in history, the Roman Empire, even spanned across the Eurasian continent. Therefore, the lords of various European countries also had the opportunity to compete on the same stage. Once the war was extrapolated to the period of these empires, then the countries covered by these empires in history could all participate in the same war. It was precisely because of this interaction that the European countries later formed an alliance. Of course, there was no lack of ambitious people in Europe. For example, France had given birth to the Napoleon Empire, and Italy had given birth to the Roman Empire. In short, the nations of Europe were united, and yet they were at war with each other. The relationship between them was complicated and indescribable. In addition, there were two other factors that contributed to the European continent's prosperity. Firstly, in the history of Europe, there were many maritime powers and even maritime overlords. Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, France, the United Kingdom, and other historical traditional maritime powers. Gaia had also taken into consideration when setting up the technology tree. Therefore, whether it was navigators, navigation technology, shipbuilding technology, or even maritime combatability, these countries were stronger than other countries. The navies of these countries were developing rapidly. Their navigators had even begun to explore the seas, preparing to open up major sea routes. They would be the greatest opponents of Shanghai City's navy in the future, perhaps even a formidable opponent. In terms of wooden warship manufacturing technology, the Ming Dynasty's shipbuilding technology was not inferior in any way. But once these countries developed ironclad warships, even the most powerful fortress ships would not be able to match them. Precisely because of this, Ouyang Shua had established the 7th Research Institute from the beginning to conduct related basic research. Although the conditions of Shanghai City could not be compared to England, the Netherlands, and the other countries, at least it would not be too far behind like in history. Secondly, the European continent was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. Technological change was the most fatal. The research on the steam engine in Kasselavik had entered the final stage. At most, in half a year, the first steam engine would be officially released. The germination of the Industrial Revolution was in the midst of gestation. Once the Industrial Revolution broke out in England and spread to the entire European continent, the power it would bring was enough to make people fear and destroy everything. In his previous life, China did not have the capital to fight against these countries. The European continent was a continent that no one could underestimate. Apart from Europe, Africa, Asia, and other continents were also progressing at a rapid pace. Among the countries on the African continent, the chief had absolute authority in the game. They were the de facto leaders. Therefore, they did not need to compete at all and could easily complete the unification of their countries. Below the chief, there were also the middle chief and the junior chief. In Africa, the chief was an intimidating and mysterious figure. In the past, the chief was the natural ruler of the tribe or region and had absolute authority in all aspects. In the game, the people of the country were also willing to unite by the chief side and unite their will. It was precisely because of Africa's unique cultural elements that the entire African continent was the first to be unified. Of course, the so-called unification only referred to between tribes and countries. After the internal unification, the countries under the leadership of the chief, due to the long period of peace, the accumulated warlike genes in their bodies were completely unleashed in the game. The entire African continent was also filled with the flames of war. The frequency of the war, the cruelty of the enemies, and the passion of the players for war were not inferior to the heroes of China. In some aspects, it was even better. For them, this kind of war, where they could reincarnate, was not so much a war as a game. Everyone was immersed in this carnival of iron and blood. In the whole world, probably only the players in the African continent were really enjoying the game. They could not wait to make a ruckus of the war desire that had been accumulated in their blood for hundreds of years. Therefore, they were crazy and uncompromising. They would use one country to completely annihilate another country as a sign of the end of the war. After the players of the destroyed countries were reincarnated in the neighboring countries, they rejoined the war. In the 5 years of his previous life, the entire African continent was still in the midst of war. Even the countries of other continents were not interested in the barren African continent. It was precisely because of this that these chieftains could unscrupulously vent their passion for war. It was estimated that only Egypt, South Africa, and a few other African countries would play a role in the future world war. As for the other countries, they were just playing with themselves. The African continent was a magical continent. The situation in the Asian continent, except for China, was somewhat similar to Europe. Of course, due to the influence of Eastern culture, the process of unification of these small countries was relatively more difficult. In Annam, the lord of Jinhai city, Yuan Tianke, had already occupied the entire northern part of Annam. The southern part of Annam had also been unified. The two giants would finally fight to the death to determine the overlord of Annam. In the East Ocean continent, lord players and adventurers were the same. In terms of lords, Honda Keisuke's Mikasa city had become the overlord of Japan. In terms of guilds, Japan's Black Dragon Guild had also completed the unification of the guilds and occupied the only capital city of Japan, Tokyo. The entire Japan was accelerating the integration, and even Mikasa City and Black Dragon Guild had begun to cooperate. The eyes of the Japanese had shifted from the mainland to the overseas. The Japanese were aggressive by nature, and they would definitely not be content with just a corner. The vast coastline of the China region had become the target of the Japanese. In his previous life, the coastal territories of the China region had been harassed and attacked by Japanese pirates. It was precisely because of this that China launched a vast expedition to annihilate Japan in one fell swoop. In Goryeo, the situation was somewhat similar to Annam. Due to historical problems, Goryeo was in a situation of confrontation between the north and south, forming a situation of two powers competing for hegemony. Pu Sunji's Yusen city had completed the unification of South Goryeo. Goryeo's only capital, Seoul, was in chaos. Goryeo was also ambitious. In his previous life, Goryeo had once burned, killed, and looted the northern part of China. The first to bear the brunt was the Kyoto region. In his previous life, because Di Chan paid too much attention to the interests of the Central Plains, he did not pay attention to such a trivial disease, so he was criticized by the players of the China region. In this life, Bayan's Naughty Rock City would be the front line against Goryeo. In addition to Japan and Goryeo, island countries like Luzon and Johor were also hidden dangers. They were like a pack of hungry wolves, surrounding China and eyeing China covetously. The Asian continent was the most complicated region in the world. Other than that, there was the American continent. In the American continent, the greatest threat was still North America. In North America, among the three countries of the United States, Canada, and Mexico, the United States was the most powerful. The setting of Gaia's technology tree was also biased against the United States. Otherwise, Jack Dawson would not have already had a team of firearms when he was promoted to a county town. The United States firearms tree was the most advanced in the world. Guns and cannons would be born in the United States, so China, which was still using cold weapons, was in an extremely difficult situation. This was the so-called relative fairness. While the China region had a rich history of fierce scholars and a brilliant civilization, they had to tolerate these countries with a relatively short history to have firearms. Of course, Gaia would set a certain limit on firearms. Otherwise, it would not be relative fairness, but absolute unfairness. Ouyang Shuo even predicted that in the future of the game, Gaia would remove the restrictions on the technology tree of all countries. However, the specific time frame was not certain. In his previous life, there were at least no signs of this in the 5th year of the game. Of course, at that time, the countries did not have the strength to carry out cross-ocean warfare. A full-scale world war had not broken out yet. Everything was still unknown. In short, the future hegemons had begun to bare their fangs. The world was changing, but the China region was still immersed in the struggle for hegemony. Even Ouyang Shuo, who understood the direction of the game, could not escape. He was in the game, and he had no choice. To be continued. Chapter 487. P.S. It's a new week. I'm looking for recommendations and monthly votes. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. No matter how the world changed, Ouyang Shuo still had to take things one step at a time. However, on October 5th, an urgent message from the Military Intelligence Department disrupted Ouyang Shuo's inspection plan. He had to end his inspection of Zhaoqing County early and rush back to Wulong City. While Chun Sheng and Huang Chao were jumping up and down, Hong Xiuquan, who had been patiently waiting, finally made his move. As soon as this heavenly king made his move, Shanghai City was in trouble. On October 2nd, the second day after Chun Sheng established his country, Hong Xiuquan and Qiyu secretly reached an agreement. The representatives of both sides signed a peace agreement at the border of Wuzhou County. The two indigenous forces would not invade each other and live in peace. One went to the west and the other to the east. As soon as the agreement was signed, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's Eastern Army stationed at the border of Wuzhou County withdrew. Even the East Camp was completely dismantled. At the same time, Qiyu City's troops stationed at the western border also withdrew. No one knew how the two sides communicated with each other and how they could trust each other to such an extent. It was unheard of that the two sides did not set up any defenses against each other. The entire peace negotiation was carried out in secret. The people who participated were the higher-ups of both sides. Otherwise, the Military Intelligence Department and the Black Snake Guards, the two major intelligence agencies, would not have been able to get wind of it. The withdrawal of both sides was only the first step of the whole operation. The Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's Eastern Army met up with the Southern Army and headed straight for Mulan Fortress. The two armies, a total of 150,000 soldiers, marched toward Mulan Fortress with great momentum. It seemed that the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was determined to take down Mulan Fortress. No one knew what was so special about Lianzhou County that it was worth Hong Xiuquan's effort. When the Military Intelligence Department received the news, they immediately ordered the City Guard Division to move north and immediately enter Mulan Fortress. They would assist the Dragon Xiang Legion's 3rd Division, the Evil Arrival Division, to fight against the strong enemy. In this way, the entire Shanghai City was like an empty city without a single soldier stationed there. Du Ruhui immediately ordered the city defense forces of all the prefectures and counties in Lianzhou County to enter the first level of alert and be on standby. The only fortunate thing was that the North Sea Bay Fleet's first formation had successfully returned to North Sea City. The Lian province was safe for the time being. The 1st Division of the Tiger Troop stationed in Xiongzhou County was also urgently moving to Cliff Mountain City. If there were any changes in the situation, Family Hua's Corps would be the main force sent to reinforce Shanghai City. In addition to attacking the Mulan Fortress, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom also merged the Western Route Army and the Northern Route Army into one, forming a new Western Route Army. The total number of soldiers reached 200,000, and the vanguard was directed at Kunming County in the eastern part of the Yunnan province. Kunming County was the county that occupied the largest area in Yunnan province, occupying a third of the province's territory, and was also the sphere of influence of Lingxi City. After a period of expansion, Lingxi City had already occupied more than half of Kunming County's territory. It was just that the area occupied by Kunming County was truly too large, and it would still take some time for Lingxi City to control the entire county. But before Bai Hua could take another step forward, such an unforeseen event occurred. Lingxi City was not completely unguarded against the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. The problem was that the Heavenly Kingdom of Peace had 3 counties. Other than expanding to the west, the North Chuan Province and the South Xiang Province were both good places to go. Who would have thought that Hong Xiuquan would actually change his previous strategy of attacking in all directions, and instead concentrate his forces to attack Kunming County with all his might? In this way, Lingxi City's situation was not good. The location of Lingxi City was just near the border between the Yunnan Province and the South Chuan Province. When the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom attacked Yunnan Province, Lingxi City was the first to bear the brunt. After receiving the news, the entire Lingxi City had already issued the first level of mobilization. Zhang Liao led an army of 50,000 and was rushing to the border to set up the first line of defense. The total strength of the entire Lingxi City was only about 5 regiments and around 70,000 soldiers. This time, Bai Hua was fighting with all his might. He had no choice but to do his best. Once the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's army broke through, he would not be able to keep his lair. What made Bai Hua helpless was that the entire Kunming County that had not yet been occupied by Lingxi City had unanimously chosen to watch from the sidelines and had no intention of joining the coalition army. Perhaps, in the minds of these lords, rather than being slowly nibbled away by Lingxi City, it was better to watch Lingxi City's destruction. As for how to deal with it in the future, that would be another matter. In other words, Lingxi City would not be able to recruit reinforcement for the time being. For a moment, Lingxi City was in a state of emergency. Lingxi City was a very important node in Ouyang Shua's territory, and it could not be lost. At this moment, only Shanghai City might be able to send reinforcements to Lingxi City. The other allies of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas were also caught in the chaos of war and could not extricate themselves. The war in the China region had finally forced the Alliance of Mountains and Seas to the edge of the cliff. As for how to send reinforcements, it was up to Ouyang Shua to unify the deployment. Not for anything else, but because it was not just the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom that had taken action. After withdrawing from the western border, Qi gathered an army of 100,000 barbarians and began to gather at the eastern border, heading straight for Zhaoqing County that had just been pacified. After a year of silence, the land of a county could no longer satisfy Qiu's appetite. This great demon god finally bared his fangs to the wilderness. The first to bear the brunt was Shanghai City again. At the same time, the newly established Lingnan City was also sharpening its knives. Ruan Ping announced in a high-profile manner that the Lingnan City would form an alliance of 100,000 soldiers in the shortest time possible and set them up at the border of Zhaoqing County. If the situation permitted, they would not rule out the possibility of attacking Zhaoqing County. In addition, the Rosy Cloud Alliance in Xiangnan Province, north of Zhaoqing County, after a few days of urgent negotiations, finally reached an agreement to form the second city-state in the China region, the Xiangnan City. As soon as the Xiangnan City was formed, the Rosy Cloud Alliance announced on the forum that in order to maintain the security of Xiangnan Province, the city-state would consider stationing troops at the southern border. For a moment, Shanghai City was surrounded by strong enemies. It was under such a background that Ouyang Shua rushed back to Wulong City at full speed. Originally, Ouyang Shua was still hesitating whether to attack east or west after the army was reorganized. He did not expect that the enemy would make the choice for him. Now, Shanghai City was surrounded by enemies on 3 sides. He had to make a good plan to break out of the situation. October 8th, Wulong City, Conference Hall. There were only 4 people attending this temporary military meeting. They were Du Ruhui, General Bai Qi, General Sun Bin, and General Han Xian, who had been teleported from Shanghai City. These 4 people were the pillars of Shanghai City's military. Du Ruhui briefly introduced the surrounding situation, and then reported the latest progress of the Army's reorganization. Starting from the 14th of September, the Army has begun large-scale reorganization. 25 days have passed, and the reorganization of the entire Army is nearing its end. The only thing missing is some weapons and equipment. Due to the long journey, they have yet to be transported. Generals of all departments, you can start receiving the troops. As soon as Du Ruhui's voice fell, everyone in the hall was shocked. To deal with the current crisis, an army of a certain size was the greatest guarantee. It had to be said that the expansion of Shanghai City's army came at the right time. At that time, if Ouyang Shuo had the slightest doubt that 1 or 2 divisions were lost, the situation today would be much more difficult. According to the deployment of the military office, the 4 Guard divisions had already set off for the encampment. The Zhaoqing County Guard Division, stationed near Tianshuang City, was the first to arrive. The Lianzhou County Guard Division and the 2nd City Guard Division had also traveled south and arrived at Beihai City from the north of Liizhou County by ship. In less than 3 days, the 2 Guard divisions would be in place. In this way, the safety of the headquarters would be temporarily assured. The 1st City Guard Division, led by Zhao Sihu, could also be stationed in Mulan Fortress with peace of mind. Otherwise, even Ouyang Shuo would panic if there were no troops stationed in Shanghai City. If there were any adventurous players who caused trouble, they could only rely on the 2,000 bailiffs of Shanghai City to clean them up. Also traveling south by ship was the Zhaoqing County Guard Division. There was also a coastline in the south of Zhaoqing County. The Zhaoqing County Guard Division would board a ship at the temporary port and head to Zhaoqing City to guard the city. In this way, the entire journey would take less than a week. In less than 5 days, the Zhaoqing County Guard Division would be in place. In this way, the 3,000 Divine Guards could be freed up and directly use the teleportation formation to reach Wulong County. Apart from the Divine Guards and the Imperial Guard Division, the only ones that could be mobilized were the 3 full armies. Shanghai City was surrounded by enemies on 3 sides. Ouyang Shuo's idea was to roughly divide the 3 armies and each be in charge of a defense area to avoid confusion in the command. For this reason, Ouyang Shuo introduced a new concept, War Zone. Everyone, Ouyang Shuo looked at the 3 divine generals below and said in a deep voice, in order to deal with the current crisis and also to set up a model for the defense area of the army in the future, I have decided to set up the first official war zone of Shanghai City. The so-called war zone is the only highest command organization in the strategic direction. The war zone will set up the war zone command department and the position of war zone commander. The war zone commander has the authority to mobilize all the combat troops in the area under his jurisdiction. As soon as Ouyang Shuo's voice fell, the eyes of Bai Qi and the others froze. There was no doubt that compared to a pure general like a corps commander, a war zone commander had more decision-making power. It was equivalent to taking on part of the responsibilities of the military office. Ouyang Shuo set up the war zone in consideration of the expansion of the territory, the expansion of the army, and the complexity of the external environment. The military office would no longer be able to take care of everything. For this reason, in order to maintain the flexibility and mobility of the frontline troops, the entire command system would not be stiff due to the long journey and unable to deal with the situation at the front line. Setting up a war zone was the best choice. Apart from making important decisions, the war zone command department was equivalent to half of the military office. To be continued. Chapter 488. Wulong City, Conference Hall. Sunlight shone into the hall, sprinkling spots of light. Amidst the flickering lights and shadows, a military meeting that concerned the fate of Shanghai City was being held. Ouyang Shuo, who was in the middle of putting his plan into practice, raised his head and said, "Sun Bin, here." In his wheelchair, Sun Bin cupped his fists and looked excited. His face even flushed with excitement. Sun Bin did not expect that the Marquis's first choice would be him. Compared to them, Bai Qi had the most seniority in the army. The sunlight shone on Sun Bin's face, which was pale and rosy. Ouyang Shua stared at this divine general, who was disabled but had a strong will, and then said in a deep voice, "This Marquis has decided to establish the Lingnan War Zone, and you'll be the commander of this war zone." As the name suggests, the Lingnan War Zone covers the entire Lingnan province, including Cheongzhou County. Everything is within the Lingnan War Zone's range of operations. The Lingnan War Zone consists of the Blind Tiger Brigade, the Cheongzhou County Garrison Division, the Liizhou County Garrison Division, the Zhaoqing County Garrison Division, and the Jinhai City Garrison Division. In total, there is a field corps and 4 garrison divisions. At the same time, the first formation of the Jiaozhou fleet that had just been established was temporarily under the command of the Lingnan Battle Zone. As for the first formation of the Cliff Mountain Fleet, it is still under the command of the Military Affairs Office. Putting the local garrison divisions under the command of a war zone was a new change in the military after the establishment of a war zone. As the number of garrison divisions increased, the military administration was unable to properly control each and every one of them. If that was the case, it would be better to put the garrison division under the unified command of the war zone within the jurisdiction. Other than the garrison division, the navy in the area was also included in the war zone. This meant that in the war zone, there were all kinds of troops on land and water. As a result, the requirements for the commander-in-chief of the theater of operations were very high. Within the territory, only Bai Qi, Sun Bin, and Han Xian had such abilities. Ouyang Shua naturally had his reasons for choosing Sun Bin. First of all, Sun Bin rose to power in Cheongzhou County, and the Tiger Troop was mostly stationed in Lingnan Province. Therefore, in terms of geographical location, Sun Bin was a suitable candidate. Secondly, it was the need of the war. Bai Qi was the first to rule out such a possibility. His military style was to attack cities and seize territory, and he was decisive in killing. The battlefield of blood and fire was Bai Qi's destiny. The figure of the god of slaughter, Bai Qi, would always appear in the most intense areas of the battle. Han Xian was a godly commander, so he was quite suitable to be the commander-in-chief of the war zone. However, Han Xian had just joined Shanghai City not too long ago, and he had only demonstrated his prowess at the Zhaoqing battlefield. It was not enough to convince the masses. That was why Ouyang Shua had chosen Sun Bin. "Thank you, Marquis, for your promotion." Sun Bin cupped his fists once more, and his voice had already calmed down. He could feel the many burdens on his shoulders. In the Lingnan theater of operations, in addition to local defense, the most important thing was to deal with the Lingnan city-state in the east. Even Xiangnan city-state in the north was within the defense range of the Lingnan theater of operations. Apart from that, there was also Calming Sea City, which was located outside of his territory. He needed to be on guard at all times. In comparison, an army of 120,000 soldiers did not seem very huge. The War Zone High Command is located in Sky Frost City. The structure of the High Command Department was based on the structure of the Military Affairs Department. It consisted of the Military Intelligence Department, the War Preparation Department, the Military Law Department, and the Operations Department. Members of the various divisions were transferred from the Military Affairs Department to set up the framework. At the end of the year, the graduates from the Army Martial Arts Lecture Hall will fill in the gaps. According to Ouyang Shua's plan, in addition to the War Zone High Command Department, there would also be a military advisor. Unfortunately, apart from Zhao Kuo, there was no suitable military advisor in the territory. And Zhao Kuo was in charge of the Military Affairs Department as the War Preparation Department, so he could not be transferred. In this way, the position of military advisor in the Lingnan Theater of Operations could only be temporarily left vacant. The establishment of the War Zone High Command Department was one of the core elements of the War Zone. With a fixed War Zone High Command Department, it was equivalent to ending the tradition of having to wait until the war to temporarily transfer departments. In the future, the entire Lingnan battlefield would be under the War Zone High Command Department. Whether it was the mobilization of troops, the supply of supplies, or the drafting of battle plans, they would all be carried out by the War Zone High Command Department. Of course, the Military Affairs Department still had the authority to command and guide the War Zone High Command Department. Ouyang Shuo wanted to establish an efficient command system, not let the generals be independent. Especially the Military Law Department, the military judges were all dispatched by the Military Affairs Department, and they had independent law enforcement power. I'll leave the defense of the territory's eastern front to you, Ouyang Shuo reminded Sun Bin one last time. I will not disappoint the Marquis. This was the highest promise that the civil and military officials of Shanghai City could make to the Marquis. Ouyang Shuo nodded and turned to look at Bai Qi and Han Xian, who had been silent all this time. He said, "Pure defense is not the style of Shanghai City. After we stabilize the eastern defense line, we can free up our hands to deal with Chiyu City and the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom." Ouyang Shuo's words were overflowing with dominance. Bai Qi and the others also looked at ease. They were all people who had been through great storms and waves. What kind of changes had they not seen, and what kind of dangerous situations had they not been through? It did not matter what kind of shady deals Hong Xiuquan and Chiyu had made. In the end, it was all about strength. It would not be easy to defeat Shanghai City. Ouyang Shuo also had a clear division of labor for Bai Qi and Han Xian. General Bai Qi. Yes, General. General, lead the 2nd Division, the 4th Division, and the newly established 5th Division back to Lianzhou County and station in Mulan Fortress. The war with the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom in the north will be under your command. Bai Qi was the commander of the northern military camp in the beginning. Now, it was equivalent to returning to his original post. Bai Qi was exceptionally familiar with Mulan Fortress. Rest assured, Marquis. Ouyang Shuo nodded and continued. General, remember to temporarily adopt a defensive stance in the war with the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. The most important thing is to ensure the safety of our ally, Lingxi City. Therefore, General, when you return this time, you must strengthen the cooperation between the two armies. When necessary, you can send Luo Shixin's division to Lingxi City to reinforce the allied forces. General, please remember that Lingxi City cannot be lost. Mulan Fortress, a steel fortress. On the walls of a stronghold, there were more than 100 crossbows equipped with 3 bows and 8 bulls ballistae. Ouyang Shuo was confident that even if there were only 4 divisions stationed, with Bai Qi as the commander, it should be impregnable. Even if the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom sent more troops, it should not be forgotten that Lianzhou County still had the Lianzhou County Guard Division and the 2nd City Guard Division. The 2 major guard divisions, especially the Lianzhou County Guard Division, could reinforce Mulan Fortress at any time. Ouyang Shuo did not know who gave Hong Xiuquan the confidence to actually dare to attack the strongest fortress in China. No matter what, he must make him bleed. What Ouyang Shuo was most worried about was Lingxi City. It was precisely because of this that Ouyang Shuo arranged for a trump card division like Luo Shixin to reinforce Lingxi City. However, even with the reinforcement of Luo Shixin's division, Lingxi City was in imminent danger against the 200,000 troops of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. Not to mention, the other lords of Kunming County might stab Lingxi City in the back. Time was tight, and Ouyang Shuo had not thought of a countermeasure for the time being. After all, Shanghai City had to deal with several enemies, and its own military strength was also limited. Being able to reinforce a division was already the limit of what Ouyang Shuo could do for now. Now, Ouyang Shuo only hoped that Bai Hua could have a way to save herself. This overlord of Yunnan in his previous life should also release her dazzling brilliance. Bai Qi nodded and did not speak. This god of slaughter was usually a man of few words, but once he made a move, it would be a sea of blood. In the Battle of Zhaoqing, Bai Qi's strategy of burning down the city had completely reversed the situation. After that, Fan Zhongyan and the other civil officials had secretly protested to Ouyang Shaw, accusing Bai Qi of being too murderous and disregarding the lives of the common people. It was not only Fan Zhongyan, but Meng Zi and the other Confucian scholars had also criticized Bai Qi incessantly. It was just that Ouyang Shaw was not in the territory during this period of time, so they had no one to complain to. Bai Qi's image in the civil officials group had plummeted. Cold-blooded butcher was the title given to Bai Qi by the civil officials. Where there were disadvantages, there were advantages. In the army, Bai Qi's prestige was like the sun in the sky. The name of the god of slaughter resounded everywhere. It was just that Bai Qi seemed indifferent to the discussions of the outside world, be it praise or criticism. Ouyang Shaw knew that Bai Qi had his own Tao, and it was not something that could be shaken by outsiders. This Tao might not be the Tao of slaughter that the outside world misunderstood. Killing was just Bai Qi's appearance. All of Bai Qi's schemes were for the sake of war. For the sake of victory, any means was acceptable. He was like an artificial intelligence, abandoning all human feelings on the battlefield. The only thing left was reason, completely reason. That was why outsiders felt that Bai Qi was cold. His face was cold, but his heart was even colder. Someone once joked that even Gaia was more emotional than Bai Qi. Ouyang Shaw did not agree with this. At least when it came to his family, Bai Qi was a man of affection. Bai Qi's coldness was loneliness, the puzzlement and loneliness of outsiders. A master was lonely. Finally, Ouyang Shaw looked at Han Xian. In the Battle of Zhaoqing, the characteristics of Han Xian's military tactics had begun to show. He did not stick to one pattern, and his grasp of timing was wonderful. This time, Ouyang Shaw would give Han Xian a greater responsibility. General Han Xian, I want you to lead the Leopard Army, the Imperial Guard Division, and the Divine Martial Guard, together with the Shi Wansui Division and the Mountain Pillar Division, which have arrived at the edge of the 100,000 Mountains to fight against Qiu's army. Ouyang Shaw defended against Lingnan City-State and the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. But against Qiu, it was a thorough attack. Ouyang Shaw's goal was to completely defeat Qiu's army and occupy Wuzhou County. It was precisely because of this that Han Xian led the strongest of the three armies. They were all made up of field troops, with trump cards like the Imperial Guard Division and veteran divisions like the Shi Wansui Division. Only by defeating Qiu's army could the entire battle situation be revived. There was no doubt that this would be a tough battle. It should be known that Qiu's trump card had not been revealed yet. To be continued. Chapter 489. In the face of the crisis, Ouyang Shaw divided the army of Shanghai City into three groups. Sun Bin commanded the Lingnan battlefront and guarded the eastern front. Bai Qi commanded the northern front in Mulan Fortress. Han Xian commanded the army to fight against Qiu's army. After the arrangements were made, the next step was to mobilize the army and carry out the final preparations before the war. As for the deployment of war resources, it had already begun a month ago. After all, Ouyang Shaw knew that there would be a battle between Qiu City and Lingnan City-State sooner or later. Therefore, the mobilization of resources had already begun without waiting for them to move out. After the meeting, the generals received the order and left. Sun Bin led his troops to Heavenly Frost City and set up the headquarters of the Lingnan battlefront and the Eastern Defense Line. Although Ruan Ping was happy, Ouyang Shaw didn't believe that Lingnan City-State would dare to take the initiative to attack. At most, they would want to take advantage of the war between Shanghai City and Qiu City to fish in troubled waters. Unfortunately, Ouyang Shaw wouldn't give them a chance. The Lingnan battlefront led by Sun Bin was not just passively defending. It was also possible that they would launch a probing attack on Jiaozhou County. Bai Qi led his personal guards and teleported to Mulan Fortress in Mulan City. As for the three divisions of the Dragonxiang Legion, they moved to Lianzhou County by water. Ouyang Shaw was reluctant to spend a huge amount of money to transport troops. The army of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was also waiting for provisions. The real war wouldn't start so soon. Han Xian led his troops to the border of Zhaoqing County and prepared to set up a frontline command center there. Ouyang Shaw wanted to try his best not to spread the flames of war to Zhaoqing County. The army was led by 3 divine generals, so Ouyang Shua didn't need to worry. Coupled with the cooperation of the military office, everything seemed to be in order. Shanghai City was no longer worried about the war. Taking advantage of this rare opportunity, Ouyang Shua left Wulong City and teleported back to Shanghai City. Ouyang Shua returned to Shanghai City to complete the promotion of his territory. As early as October 1st, Shanghai City had reached the upper limit of 500,000 people. However, Ouyang Shua was in Zhaoqing County, so he was delayed. It was a good opportunity to complete the promotion of the city. Ouyang Shua didn't disturb anyone when he returned to Shanghai City. He chatted with Song Jia for a while, then went to the main hall alone. Ouyang Shua had completed the promotion process 9 times and was already familiar with it. He muttered territory level up in his heart, and a white light flashed. In the middle of the main hall, the golden stone tablet once again slowly rose from the ground. Ouyang Shua of the stone with his right hand, the system. As such, it was extremely inconvenient for the commoners to use it due to the factor of safety. When a major incident occurred and the royal city was sealed, the teleportation array would also be sealed and could not be used. However, Shanghai City's influence in the China region was growing day by day. Regardless of whether it was students, merchants, or skilled people, there would be people coming every day. The Imperial Guard division that guarded Royal City suffered unspeakable hardships and lived in fear all day long. Now, with the addition of a teleportation array, Ouyang Shua could make a difference. He set the teleportation array of the royal city to be used only by the territory's soldiers and officials, as well as those specially invited by Ouyang Shua. The additional teleportation array was limited to the commoners. This way, there would be no hidden dangers that would cause trouble for the Imperial Guard division. Ouyang Shua thought for a moment and decided to set up the second teleportation array in the Northern District. Firstly, the Northern District was the entrance to Shanghai City, and it was also a residential area, so it was convenient to come and go. Secondly, the Middle District was below the Northern District, so it was very convenient to go in and out of other districts. Finally, there was another point. The 2 sides of the Northern District were the encampments of the City Guard Division. As such, if someone really wanted to use the teleportation array to cause trouble, the nearby City Guard Division would immediately arrive and lock down the entire Northern District. There was no doubt that after the teleportation array was set up, the Black Snake Guards and Mountain Sea Guards would be stationed near the teleportation array, closely monitoring all the people coming and going. After choosing the location, Ouyang Shua heard the sound of a system notification. System notice. The location of the teleportation array has been determined and has been automatically generated. Please check it yourself. System notice. Congratulations to player. Not have closed for upgrading your territory to a level 2 county city. After the promotion, the Lord can make a slight adjustment to the terrain of the territory. The extent of the adjustment will be determined by the system. Please select the terrain to be adjusted. Friendly reminder. Terrain adjustment only changes the original foundation, not the type of terrain. For example, you can widen the river channel, raise the mountain range, and so on. Ouyang Shua's eyes lit up. This was getting more and more interesting. Gaia's move was also a form of compensation to the Lord. After all, when the Lord chose the location of the village, he would only focus on 1 or 2 factors. It was inevitable that there would be some regrets in the geographical location. For example, Ouyang Shua's biggest regret was that there were too few and too narrow passageways in the Lianzhou Basin. There were only 2 passageways, one in the north and one in the south. In the past, it was an advantage, but now it was slowly becoming a disadvantage. Ouyang Shua didn't dare to make any changes to the canyon between the Southern Guard Pass and the Mulan Fortress, because if he made any changes, the Mulan Fortress would be destroyed and the army of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom would be able to march straight in. Ouyang Shua didn't want to make a mistake, so he directly chose to change the river channel in the south. Ouyang Shua hoped that after the changes, large ships would be able to directly enter Shanghai City's dock through the river channel. Widen the Friendship River, Qiushui River, and the Canyon Channel where the two rivers converge. System notification. Terrain change application confirmed. Widening river channel. Calculation in progress. System notification. Calculation complete. Terrain change complete. The Friendship River and Qiushui River will both be widened to 100 meters, and the Canyon Channel will be widened to 200 meters. The depth of the two rivers will be expanded correspondingly. Please check the details yourself. In just an instant, the two rivers had each more than doubled in width. The people on both sides of the river didn't realize it at all. It was as if time had stopped for a moment, and the river channel had widened. Seeing this, the people on both sides of the river slowly knelt to the river and prayed. In their minds, the river god was showing his power. At this point, the Friendship River and Qiushui River also had river gods, and they were worshipped by the people. The people spontaneously built river god temples on both sides of the river and worshipped them. After the river channel was widened, even large ships could freely enter and leave Shanghai City. In this way, large merchant ships would no longer need to transfer goods at the North Seaport. Just this alone created a great convenience for Shanghai City's maritime trade. Of course, correspondingly, it would also bring new challenges to the defense of Shanghai City. After all, if ships could enter Shanghai City, then the pirate ships could naturally enter Shanghai City as well. The North Sea Bay Fleet became more and more important. Ouyang Shuo was still willing to take this risk. If Shanghai City wanted to develop into an existence that could rival a royal city in China, it couldn't be complacent. The future capital city must have the spirit of a capital city, and it couldn't be too stingy. At this point, the promotion of the territory was finally completed. A system announcement sounded in Ouyang Shuo's ears. System announcement. Congratulations to player, not have closed for becoming the first lord in China to be promoted to a level 2 county city. The reward is 4,400 achievement points. Shanghai City's promotion this time didn't cause any disturbance because the entire China region was in chaos. All the lords' attention was on the battlefield, and they had no time to care about anything else. To be continued. Chapter 490. October 9th, Shanghai City, Protectorate of the Southern Border. Although Shanghai City's promotion was quiet and unnoticed by the outside world, it was still a great achievement for Shanghai City itself. Not to mention other things, just the addition of the teleportation formation and the widening of the river would have a profound impact on the development of Shanghai City, increasing the city's potential for development. It was unknown what kind of reward Gaia would prepare for the next promotion. In the main hall, the territory stone had sunk into the ground again. Ouyang Shuo began to look at the territory's attributes. Territory name, Protectorate of the Southern Border, Lord, Protectorate of the Southern Border, Marquis of Lianzhou, Louis, First Class Marquis, Main Title. Number 1 County, increases territory popularity by 50, Secondary Title. Holy Land of 100 Families, Blessed Land of Craftsmen, Land of Martial Arts, Territory Administration. Shanghai City, Level 2 County. Population Administration, 500,000/1, 000,000. Refugee respawn rate, 500, 1 plus 50, equals 750 refugees per day. True respawn rate, 750 plus. 700 plus 700 is equal to 2,150 refugees per day. Territory area. For counties, more than 800,000 square kilometers. Territory characteristics. Slight political index, 80 out of 100, determines administrative efficiency, affects popular sentiment. Economic index, 85 out of 100, determines trade prosperity, affects tax revenue. Cultural index, 88 out of 100, determines education, affects quality of residence. Technological index, 50 out of 100, determines research level, affects technology tree. Military index, 85 out of 100, determines military strength, affects stable relationships. Territory administration. Lianzhou County, Cheongzhou County, Laizhou County, Zhaoqing County, and Zhenhai City financial institution. The Bank of the Four Seas, Territory Academy. Southwest University China Hall, Principal Jiangshang. Military Lecture Hall, Principal Sun Wu, 100 Schools of Thought. Military, legalism, Moism, agriculture, vertical and horizontal, territory Chamber of Commerce. Chui's Chamber of Commerce, Song's Chamber of Commerce, Bai's Chamber of Commerce, etc., special building. Library, hidden building, Mazu Temple, recruitment hall, Yellow Emperor Temple list of basic buildings, frowny face, Zither Academy. The official office in charge of the Zither. Apart from researching Zither music, it is also responsible for collecting folk music and nurturing Zither apprentices. Construction requirement. High-level Zither Master, Zither Academy Blueprint. 20,000 units of wood, 20,000 units of bricks, 10,000 units of stones. Construction time, 20 days. Note, the construction has been completed. Wholesale market. A commercial market where goods and services are sold to secondary wholesalers and retailers, the Chamber of Commerce, and the government. Construction requirements. Mature wholesale products and channels. 30,000 units of wood, 50,000 units of green bricks, 30,000 units of stone. Construction time, 20 days. There were some new changes to the status panel of a Rank 2 county city. The biggest change was the addition of Technology Index to the Territory Index. This meant that the further the territory developed, the more important the level of technology would be. Shanghai City's Technology Index was only 50 points, which paled in comparison to the other 4 indexes. For the next step, Ouyang Shuo planned to increase the investment of research funds. In September, although Ouyang Shuo wasn't in Shanghai City, the finance department still sent him the territory's financial report. Compared to the previous month, the territory's net revenue had gone one step further, breaking the 200,000 gold coin mark for the first time. Of course, this did not include the transfer payment to Zhaoqing County, as well as the additional military expenditure due to the army reorganization that had just been completed. After deducting these 2 items, there was still roughly 100,000 gold coins left. Ouyang Shuo already had a plan on how to use the funds. He would discuss it with Ng Pomelo later. Other than the territory index, there were also slight changes in other aspects. Compared to a Rank 1 county city, the population limit of a Rank 2 county city had doubled. The subsidiary cities Friendship City and Pool City had been promoted to county city. The number of refugees that spawned in Shanghai City increased to 2,150. With the normal spawning speed of refugees, it would take more than 230 days to reach the population limit again. If the citizens of the royal city were to come to Shanghai City to settle down, the time needed would be shortened. Ouyang Shuo estimated that in May or June of the 3rd year of Gaia, Shanghai City would be promoted again. Originally, Ouyang Shuo wasn't very enthusiastic about the promotion of a county city. After all, the 4,400 merit points that the system rewarded were no longer attractive to him. Shanghai City also didn't need to become number 1 to establish its position as the overlord. If there was a need, it would be a fight for the title of the world's number 1 capital city in the future. And that would be at least 2 years later. Ouyang Shuo remembered that in the 5th year of Gaia in his previous life, there wasn't a single duke born in the world. The only thing he didn't know was if he could break this record. But for this promotion, Ouyang Shuo unexpectedly discovered that Gaia had given him a big gift bag. As such, Ouyang Shuo immediately looked forward to the next promotion of his territory. Other than the population limit and territory area changes, the other changes such as the 100 Schools of Thought were minor adjustments made by Gaia to the development of the wilderness. They didn't affect the overall situation. Other than the attributes interface of the territory, the last was the basic buildings. There were only 2 basic buildings in a Rank 2 county city. There was no need to mention the Zither Academy. When they conquered Liuzhou County, they had captured a musician. He was the spring and autumn period Master Sherwin. In less than half a month after the war, the Zither Academy was established in Lingnan University Hall. The only problem was the wholesale market. The construction of the wholesale market didn't require architectural drawings, but required mature wholesale goods and channels. Ouyang Shuo understood this requirement in this way. First, since it was a wholesale market, it naturally needed suitable goods. Only bulk goods such as rice, salt, cloth, leather, porcelain, and other bulk goods needed to be wholesale. This was something that Shanghai City already had. Second, it needed to establish a perfect channel for goods. Most of the goods traded in the territory were directly purchased by the merchant guilds or merchants from the commoners or the farms of the various prefectures and counties. If they wanted to build a wholesale market, it was equivalent to adding a middleman. In this way, merchants wouldn't have to painstakingly travel to buy goods. Instead, the local middleman would buy them one by one and then transport them to the wholesale market for a unified transaction. The middleman would earn a bit of profit, and the merchant associations would save on manpower and time. Everyone was happy. The above 2 points were actually to ensure that after the wholesale market was built, there wouldn't be a situation where there was no market, and the day the market opens is the day the business stops. As for the second point, the territory wasn't perfect yet. Thus, the construction of the wholesale market still needed a period of incubation. After checking the attributes of the territory, Ouyang Shuo left the main hall and returned to his study. Since there was still some time left, Ouyang Shuo decided to take care of some matters before returning to Wulong City. When Lu Imo walked into the protectorate of the southern border, his heart was filled with doubts. Towards Ouyang Shuo's sworn brother, Lu Imo, the master of firearms, he only felt admiration. He didn't expect that this seemingly unremarkable sworn brother of his would be able to stir up such a storm in the game. Although Lu Imo was wholeheartedly immersed in the research of guns and cannons, he basically didn't pay attention to the outside world. But the incessant system announcements were still reminding him that Shanghai City was still advancing at a furious pace. It was precisely because of this that Lu Imo didn't want to fall behind. With the cooperation of Magnus and him, they had already made some crucial progress in the research of guns. Lu Imo wondered if Ouyang Shuo had called him over for this matter. When Lu Imo stepped into the study, Ouyang Shuo was in the middle of a discussion with Cui Yingyu, the head of the finance bureau. Ouyang Shuo was speaking, and Cui Yingyu was listening attentively while taking notes. The two siblings had a tacit understanding of each other. As for the shipbuilding industry, we need to make a good plan. We need to add at least 3 more shipyards to the existing ones. We can build a giant shipyard in Zhenhai City, and we can also build one in Yanluo City in Liizhou County. As for the last one, we need to choose a location in Xiongzhou County. The shipbuilding industry will certainly be one of the pillars of the territory. We need to start planning ahead and expand our production capacity. In the future, the demand for both merchant ships and warships will only increase. Understood. Although the reorganization of the army this time has consumed a lot of funds, there are still ways to make up for it. Contact Division Chief Du and ask him to transport all the obsolete weapons and equipment, including those collected from the battlefield, to Cliff Mountain City for sale. This way, we can save a lot of transaction taxes. I estimate that this batch of weapons and equipment can be sold for at least 300,000 gold coins. Right now, the mutants in Cliff Mountain City are very enthusiastic about exploring the island. We need weapons and equipment supplies. Hearing this, Yingyu's eyes lit up, and she nodded vigorously. She thought that this time, she would definitely be able to make a killing. Of course, we need to increase the support for the military industry. I will ask the intelligence stations in the various capital cities to cooperate with the finance department to directly launch a large-scale recruitment fair in the 9 king cities. We will attract blacksmiths and tailors to settle down in Shanghai City with high salaries and benefits, and replenish the large military workshops. Apart from that, the military workshops in the various counties can also be operated in the same way. The finance department must cooperate with the war preparedness department on this matter. The military industry could be said to be the hero behind the territory's previous military expansion. Without the hard work of countless craftsmen, how would Shanghai City be able to upgrade the new army time and time again? How would they be able to sell the exchanged weapons and equipment to fill the gap in the military expenditure after the war? Precisely because of this, the treatment of the craftsmen in the military workshops was also the best among the craftsmen. After Shanghai City redivided the districts, the entire southern district was directly designated as a military zone. Other than the objective needs of the major workshops to expand, there was another reason, which was to provide better treatment for the craftsmen. The construction department ordered the Shanghai city government to build residential areas for the families of the military in the southern district. All the craftsmen in the military workshops could enjoy free housing. Just this alone was enough to make others envious. To be continued. Chapter 491. P.S. Sorry, I only have one chapter today. I will definitely make up for the missing one. Apologies. Brother Lu Mo. Ouyang Shuo looked up and saw Lu Mo standing at the door. Please come in. Ouyang Shuo stood up and welcomed Lu Mo to his seat. This firearms master might seem inconspicuous now, but he would be a core figure in the territory's technological world in the future. I called you over to discuss the establishment of a steelworks factory. Ouyang Shuo did not beat around the bush with Lu Mo and went straight to the point. Marquis wants to build another steelworks factory? Lu Mo's expression was calm. Researchers were usually like that. He said in a matter-of-fact manner, the technology for the first steelworks factory is already mature. It is indeed ready to be built again. No. Ouyang Shuo shook his head and crossed his fingers. It's not one, it's 10. 10. Lu Mo was shocked and could not help but jump up from his seat. Even Ingyu widened her eyes and looked at Ouyang Shuo. She wanted to see if her brother had gone mad. With the territory's current steel consumption, another steelworks factory is enough. 10 is a bit exaggerated. Lu Mo looked at Ouyang Shuo and tactfully reminded him not to expand blindly. Ouyang Shuo smiled and gestured for Lu Mo to calm down. He said with a smile, "Listen to me. Building 10 steelworks at once is not a spur-of-the-moment decision, but something that has been planned for a long time." Ouyang Shuo was naturally aware of the territory's steel demand. The reason why he wanted to build 10 steelworks at once was because of the upcoming system update. In the third system update, Gaia would completely remove the super auction platform. This also meant that the various goods in the game could no longer be transported by air. All the transportation of goods had to be done through courier stations or waterways. And what did the steelworks need the most? Iron, ore, and coal. These two mineral resources were scarce in the Shanghai territory. Especially coal, the territory did not have it all. They had to purchase it from fallen Phoenix City. Once the super auction platform was removed, it would be a fantasy to transport hundreds or thousands of tons of coal from fallen Phoenix City to Shanghai City. At least, it was impossible to achieve in a short period of time. It was because of this that Ouyang Shuo decided to build a steelworks factory on a large scale in the last 2 months. At the same time, in conjunction with the territory's improved finances, they frantically purchased iron, ore, and coal. Ouyang Shuo's ambition was to purchase the territory's coal for the next few years in one go. This action was somewhat similar to Ouyang Shuo's large-scale purchases before the first system update. But this time, it was even crazier. The funds involved could reach hundreds of thousands or even millions of gold coins. However, Ouyang Shuo was unable to explain these things to Lu Mo and Ingyu. Now, Ouyang Shuo could only rely on the prestige that he had built up over a long period of time. This was especially true for Ingyu. In her eyes, Ouyang Shuo was simply the embodiment of farsightedness. All the decisions made by Ouyang Shuo in the territory were ultimately proven to be correct and full of foresight. For example, purchasing food on a large scale before the food crisis. When the leather in the hands of adventure-type players was still not valued, they invested a huge sum of money to purchase it. For example, while the gazes of others were still limited to the wilderness, Ouyang Shuo had already cast his gaze to the vast and boundless ocean to obtain wealth from the ocean. There are all sorts of things like this. Thus, seeing Ouyang Shuo's resolute tone, Ingyu collected her thoughts. Although she was still full of doubts, she still firmly cast her vote and stood on the same side as Ouyang Shuo. Seeing this, Lu Mo could only smile bitterly. Perhaps, The current generation's heroes all have foresight that ordinary people don't have. Although I still don't understand, as long as you think clearly, the 7th Research Institute will fully cooperate with you. How could the 7th Research Institute spare the construction of the steel factories? There was no doubt that in order to build 10 steel factories at once, in the next 2 months, the 7th Research Institute's researchers would basically have to stop their current research and head to various places to guide the craftsmen on how to build the factories. The steel factory was a very professional building, and there were a lot of steel-making equipment inside. In the absence of construction blueprints, only the researchers of the Research Institute could go to the site to guide the entire process. Stopping research for 2 months was simply asking for the lives of these researchers. There was no doubt that after Liu Mo returned and announced the news, Ouyang Shuo would definitely be labeled as a cold-blooded capital investor. A trace of shame flashed across Ouyang Shuo's face. It really wasn't because he had any foresight, but it was all due to the credit of his rebirth. Ouyang Shuo's heart warmed at Liu Mo's support. Although he usually didn't have much contact with his big brother, the two of them had already formed a deep brotherhood and friendship. The friendship between gentlemen was as clear as water. All right, with the support of the two of you, let's go all out. Ouyang Shuo calmed his emotions and continued. This is my plan for the 10 steel factories. In Lianzhou County, along the Friendship River and Qiushui River, we will build one each. Together with the steel factories in Shanghai City, we will form a powerful steel group. No matter how the territory changed, Lianzhou County would always be the heart of the territory and also the county with the greatest demand for steel. Constructing 3 steel factories would definitely come in handy in the future. Building the steel factories next to the river not only could solve the water source problem, but it would also be convenient for transportation. Especially after being promoted to a county city, the 2 rivers would be more than doubled, and large cargo ships would be able to sail through. Recently, Old Sun had already worked together with Zheng Dehai to jointly research and develop cargo ships that were specially used to transport iron, ore, and steel. Once the research and development was successful, the transportation problem of iron, ore, and other materials would be greatly alleviated. Old Sun was also a big shot in the shipyard. Under his guidance, the types of ships produced by the shipyard had long surpassed the limits of the technical manual. The classification of ships in Shanghai City was becoming more and more detailed. For example, there were tugboats that were specialized in transporting goods, salvage ships, and so on. This was especially true for the modification of warships. The new generation of fortress ships in Shanghai City had long surpassed the shipbuilding standards of the Ming Dynasty. After obtaining the Ming Dynasty Ship Construction Technical Manual, some of Old Sun's previous ideas for modification were completely stimulated. One of the fortress ships, which was used as an experimental warship, had already been modified beyond recognition. After all, no matter how good the idea was, it had to be tested in practice. Reality proved that some of Old Sun's ideas were feasible. There were also some ideas that proved to be too advanced and were not recognized by Gaia. Other than that, we will build a steel factory near each of the 3 shipyards. One will also be built in Beihai City. The remaining 4 will be located in Zhaoqing County, Liizhou County, and Qiongzhou County. Building a steel factory near the shipyard highlighted Ouyang Shuo's ambition. In the future, if they wanted to develop ironclad warships, the shipyard would have a huge demand for steel. It was precisely for this reason that they needed to build a steel factory nearby. Liu Mo was also very sensitive to technical issues, so he immediately understood Ouyang Shuo's intention. Thinking of this, he felt a heavy sense of responsibility in his heart. The biggest bottleneck in the development of ironclad warships was the 7th Research Institute. The biggest problem was the power. If they wanted to build an ironclad warship, the power system of the warship must surpass the sail and enter the era of steam. The steam engine had yet to be invented in the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, England. Just relying on Magnus, a European, was far from enough. The progress of Shanghai City's steam engine research was far behind that of England and even Europe. There was still a long way to go in the future. Ouyang Shuo looked at Ingyu and said in a deep voice, "The finance department will adjust the budget for the next 3 months. We will use as much money as possible to purchase iron, ore, and coal. Especially coal, we can't slack off. From the start, the purchased iron, ore, and coal will be stored separately in the 10 steel factories." Hearing this, Ingyu looked a bit awkward. Ouyang Shuo's move was equivalent to completely messing up the finance department's budget. "Big brother, can you tell me how much you want to purchase?" Ouyang Shuo's expression was firm as he said in a powerful voice, "We will purchase as much as the market has." Hiss, and you couldn't help but suck in a mouthful of cold air. "If necessary, we can borrow funds from the major chambers of commerce again," Ouyang Shuo added, indicating that his plan to sweep the market must be carried out thoroughly. In Ouyang Shuo's mind, borrowing money was never a shameful thing. Being able to borrow money and then use the borrowed money to make money was in itself a very impressive ability. "Understand?" Ingyu nodded. She was already prepared to grit her teeth and spend the rest of the day. She had to find a way to reduce the other expenses of the territory. In addition, all the bulk materials that are related to the territory, such as salt and silk, must be sold before the end of the year. Don't store them in the warehouse. With the acquisition of Cheongzhou County, Liizhou County, and other coastal counties, the territory had become the largest salt supplier in China. As for the colorful silkworm breeding that was carried out in various places, the production of colorful silk had also increased by dozens of times. In the future, these two goods could only be sold to Chuanzhou by sea. The problem was that Chuanzhou was also a coastal city, and the salt market was already saturated. In the future, the salt market in Shanghai City was very likely to be unsaleable. To Shanghai City, salt was very important. In the early stages of the territory's construction, they relied on the profits from the Northern Twilight Salt Works to support the territory's development. Regarding this problem, Ouyang Shuo couldn't think of a good solution for the time being. He could only take it one step at a time. If the salt market was really unsaleable, it would cause a lot of trouble to the territory's finances. And you didn't want to find out Ouyang Shuo's intention. She just nodded to show that she remembered it. Only then did Ouyang Shuo's task come to an end. To be continued. Chapter 492. October 10th, Shanghai City. The moment Ouyang Shuo saw Bai Shui, he was stunned. Her temperament was unparalleled, and no one could bear to blaspheme her. There was a beauty in the north, peerless and independent. "Miss Bai Shui, welcome to Shanghai City." Ouyang Shuo stood at the entrance of the main hall and personally welcomed the young master of the Bai Trading Company. Such preferential treatment made Bai Shui feel extremely flattered. After he finished informing Ingyu about the purchase, Ouyang Shuo's next objective was to strive to persuade the Chui Merchant Company, and by Merchant Company, to move their headquarters to Shanghai City before the end of the year. This was because once the system was updated and the super trading platform was removed, all the major chambers of commerce in Royal City, with the exception of Chuanzhou City, would temporarily lose contact with Shanghai City. This was especially true for Xianyang City, which was separated by the territory of the Yanhuang Alliance. Ouyang Shuo naturally had to make plans beforehand. Needless to say, the Chui clan merchant group had the intention to move since long ago. The relationship between the Chui family and Shanghai City was getting closer and closer. Among the Chui family, other than Chui Shaoxi, who was the magistrate of Yun in Prefecture in Zhaoqing Prefecture, there were two other people who were county magistrates. The Chui family had an influence that could not be ignored in both the political and business circles of the territory. After weighing the pros and cons, Shanghai City was obviously more attractive to the Chui clan than Dali. The future of the Chui family in the territory was even more imaginative. Thus, after Ouyang Shuo revealed his intentions, the Chui family's patriarch immediately made the decision and immediately began the relocation of the family. The Chui clan's Chamber of Commerce had been operating in Shanghai City for the longest time, and they had acquired a large piece of land in the West District. Therefore, the Chui family's migration wasn't too hasty. Perhaps, the head of the Chui family had been planning this since long ago. Of course, the migration of a family was not a simple matter. Some of the shops left in Dali were to be transferred, while others were to be kept and continued to be managed by people. The hundreds and thousands of shopkeepers and waiters employed by the family also needed to be arranged properly. As for those who were willing to settle down in Shanghai City, everything would remain the same. If they were unwilling, he wouldn't force them. Everyone parted on good terms. The Chui family's connections in Dali still needed to be managed. The master of the Chui clan was far-sighted. He was sure that the Marquis of Lian Province's future would be limitless. Perhaps in a few years, all of Dali would be under the rule of the Mountain Sea territory. The difficult one was the Bai clan trading company. Although Bai Shui was the young master of the merchant house, there was still her father Bai Gui above her. This ancestor Shang was the true person who had been living in seclusion behind the scenes. He held the lifeline of the Bai clan trading company in his hands. Bai Gui and Ouyang Shuo would not be able to meet for the time being. The only way was to convince White Snow. Ouyang Shuo did not want to use his relationship with Wei Yang to kidnap Bai Shui. As the saying goes, there are things that a gentleman should do and things that he should not do. Besides that, the nature of the Bai Merchant Company and the Chui Merchant Company was different. The Chui Merchant Group was a native power of the main map, and its connections in Dali were deep and complicated. Of course, the influence of the Chui Clan Merchant Group was limited to Dali in the past. The Bai Clan Trading Company was different. It suddenly appeared after the spring and autumn warring states period entered the wilderness. Because of this, Ouyang Shuo knew very little about the Bai Clan Trading Company's background and foundation. On the surface, the headquarters of the Bai Clan Trading Company was located in Xianyang, and it was just an inconspicuous trading company. It was hard for outsiders to know the truth. After all, in history, the Bai Clan Trading Company was a colossus that combined trade and intelligence. Ouyang Shuo reckoned that the news of family must have been deliberately leaked by Bai Gui to his daughter, White Snow, to give Ouyang Shuo a favor. What kind of scheme did Bai Gui have in mind? Did it mean that the merchants of the 100 schools of thought were also preparing to surface and fight for a status that was worthy of their wealth? What kind of tacit understanding and schemes did Bai Gui and family have? Everything was a ball of fog. Although the Jingming assembly had come to an end, the struggle of the 100 schools of thought had just begun. Since the Qin dynasty, the figures of the 100 schools of thought had been active on the stage of history in every dynasty. The only difference was that during the spring and autumn warring states period, they were in the light, but later on, they were in the dark. The disputes of the 100 schools of thought would accompany the progress of the game. Because of the game, the schools of thought that did not have a prominent position in history could shine in the wilderness. The Shang clan was one of the outstanding representatives. In the wilderness, Ouyang Shuo was not the only lord who paid attention to the development of commerce. It was reported that the business atmosphere of Danyang City, which was managed by Lord Chunshin, was not inferior to that of Shanghai City. After all, Lord Chunshin's family was a business family. Doing business was what they were best at. Other than Lord Chunshin, the other lords were not fools. They would not be restricted by the thinking of the ancient times and do stupid things like favoring agriculture and suppressing commerce. Thus, the Shang clan could be said to have great achievements in the wilderness. Moreover, throughout the dynasties, the Shang clan could be said to have produced many talents. Shen Wansan, Qiao Xiong, Hu Shuyan, and the others were all well-known existences in modern society. Precisely because of this, how could Bai Gui and Fan Li continue to remain silent? Whether it was the Black Snake Guards or the Shanghai Guards, they were temporarily unable to infiltrate the mysterious circle of historical figures. Guya obviously had her own plans regarding this, but he did not know what Guya's ultimate goal was. Ouyang Shuo had summoned Bai Shui this time to firstly discuss the matter of moving the Bai Trading Company's headquarters, and secondly, he wanted to probe the Bai Trading Company and see exactly what Bai Gui and the others were selling in their gourds. The two sat down in the main hall, cautiously sizing each other up, their eyes filled with curiosity. Ouyang Shuo was curious about Bai Gui and Fan Li, who stood behind White Snow. White Snow was curious about Ouyang Shua himself. How could White Snow not be curious about Ouyang Shua? She was very clear about her husband Wei Yang's character. Unless he met a brilliant ruler, he would not easily come out of seclusion. In history, Wei Yang had traveled around many countries and rejected the invitations of countless monarchs. In the end, he unexpectedly chose the frail and weak Qin country. One of the reasons was because of Qin Shaogong. What kind of charisma did the man in front of her have to make Wei Yang follow him so wholeheartedly? On the surface, Ouyang Shua looked calm. The continuous battles on the battlefield had wiped away the immaturity on Ouyang Shua's face. What replaced it was determination and unyieldingness. His face was as hard and cold as a knife. Although he intentionally controlled it, Ouyang Shua's body still faintly emitted a threatening, killing intent, as well as a vast and majestic aura of an emperor. The two completely opposite temperaments had actually merged perfectly on Ouyang Shua's body. As the saying goes, thunder and rain are the grace of a monarch. To a monarch, the Tao of benevolence and the Tao of killing were existences that could be exchanged. Therefore, even if Ouyang Shua's expression was gentle, no one dared to be impudent in front of him. White Snow naturally did not dare to underestimate the person in front of her. However, White Snow still did not understand the purpose of the other party's invitation. Logically speaking, as a guest of Shanghai City, White Snow should have come to pay a visit to her master, Ouyang Shua. However, when White Snow came to Shanghai City, Ouyang Shua was far away in Zhaoqing County. Only a few people knew about Ouyang Shua's return. Just last night, the guards of the Protectorate came to Wei Yang's residence to inform him that the Lord had summoned White Snow the next morning. I wonder what position the Bai Family Trading Company has in the Shanghai City market. After some small talk, Ouyang Shua opened the conversation. To Ouyang Shua, even if he wanted to test someone, there was no need to beat around the bush. Shanghai City is bustling with commerce, and the government also supports the trading companies. Even Xianyang City is not as open and tolerant as Shanghai City. When White Snow heard this, she threw out the speech that she had prepared. When she met Wei Yang, White Snow had joked that she wanted Wei Yang to help her establish the Bai Family Trading Company in Shanghai City. In reality, how could White Snow really ask Wei Yang for help? She knew very well what kind of person her husband was. To Wei Yang, everything had to be done in accordance with the law. How could he be biased just because of her? Therefore, before White Snow came to see Ouyang Shua, she had already made up her mind to find a breakthrough from him. As long as Lord Ouyang Shua spoke, the Bai Family Trading Company would be able to establish a foothold in Shanghai City. Otherwise, the Bai Family Trading Company would not even be able to obtain a shop, let alone obtain a piece of land to reconstruct the workshop area according to the layout of the trading company. The current Shanghai City was completely different from the time when it was first built. When Wei Ran was in power, in order to speed up the construction of Shanghai City, she attracted the trading companies to move in. Wei Ran opened the door to all the large chambers of commerce. She had all the land and policies they needed. This was also the reason why the early development of Shanghai City was established. But now it was different. Shanghai City had already passed the stage of extensive development. After Zhang Wenzhong took office, the auction of land had begun to tighten. When a 9-grid city planning was introduced, it would be even more difficult for the trading companies to obtain land. In the whole of Shanghai City, only the eastern and western business districts were allowed to build workshops. As for the middle city, the competition was even more intense. The big trading companies could fight countless times over a section of the pier. One could imagine how difficult it would be for a newcomer like the Bai Family Trading Company to establish a foothold. After all, the old trading companies like Huchuan Ji Trading Company had been supporting the construction of Shanghai City for a long time. When Shanghai City was in trouble, these trading companies had generously lent money to it. The construction of Liizhou County was partly due to the contributions of these big trading companies. Therefore, the Department of Commerce gave these trading companies preferential treatment. But what about the Bai Family Trading Company? At least, Shanghai City had not seen its value yet. White Snow estimated that if she did not bring news of Fan Li, she would not even be able to step through the door of the Department of Commerce, unless Wei Yang appeared. Because of this, White Snow attached great importance to this meeting. There was no doubt about White Snow's love for Wei Yang. But at the same time, White Snow was an independent woman. She hoped to make a career of her own outside of the family. Entering Shanghai City was perhaps a test from her father, Bai Gui. White Snow did not want to fail. To be continued. Chapter 493. P.S. During the period of double monthly votes, I would like to plead for monthly votes. Since that's the case, does your company intend to move your headquarters to Shanghai City? Ouyang Shuo went along with Bai Shui's words and stated his first goal, straightforward and direct. Move the headquarters? Bai Shui was surprised by Ouyang Shuo's request. That's right. Ouyang Shuo nodded. If the Bai Trading Company is willing to move its headquarters to Shanghai City, you can enjoy the same treatment as the Chui Trading Company. How about it? Ouyang Shuo could tell what Bai Shui needed the most with a single glance. Thus, he placed a heavy bet and used generous treatment to attract the Bai Trading Company. If Bai Shui still didn't agree, then Ouyang Shuo could only give up and stop pestering her. Seeing that a war was about to break out, Qiyu sharpened his blade. Ouyang Shuo couldn't stay in Shanghai City for long. Before he left, he had to make the necessary arrangements for the update of the game. Otherwise, it would be a waste of the advantage of his rebirth. Indeed, Ouyang Shuo's conditions moved Bai Shui. If the Bai Trading Company could obtain the same treatment as the Chui Trading Company, then there would be no obstacles for them to rise in Shanghai City. Unfortunately, Bai Shui couldn't decide on the matter of moving the headquarters. I will remember Marquis' sincerity. However, this matter is of great importance, so please allow me to ask my father before replying to Marquis. How about it? Ouyang Shuo nodded. Bai Shui's reply was within his expectations. As expected, everything depended on Bai Gui. Of course. However, my promise is only limited to before the new year. After the new year, even if the Bai Trading Company was willing, they wouldn't be able to. Please pass on this message to your father. All right. Bai Shui was puzzled, but she still agreed readily. She had a premonition that although her father had tacitly approved of her coming to Shanghai City, he already had the intention to move. Thus, this decision wouldn't take long. In the southwest corner of the protectorate of the southern region, there was an inconspicuous side hall that didn't even have a name. The side hall was hidden in the green mountains and clear waters, secluded and uninhabited. Even the people walking in and out were silent. No expression could be seen on their faces. There was nothing special about the side hall, but it gave off a sinister aura that shrouded the sky. In the future, the officials of the territory feared this place like a tiger. Yes, this was the headquarters of the Mountain Sea Guard. After a period of preparation, coupled with the support of a large amount of funds, the framework of the Mountain Ocean Guard had been set up and was officially in operation. Tens of thousands of officials in the 4 counties were under the surveillance of the Mountain Sea Guards. Before the new year, the administrative office was in the open, while the Mountain Sea Guards were in the dark. The two worked together to conduct a massive and thorough inspection. Ouyang Shuo jokingly called this operation the Sharp Sword Operation. The sharp sword was unsheathed, and the turbid current was swept away. In the quiet afternoon, after Ouyang Shuo had sent off Bai Shui, he took a short nap and quietly came to this side hall. Behind him was a cool-looking young man. It was Chui Tianqi. Chui Tianqi and his fellow apprentices had already completed their training in the Special Operations Base. Chui Tianqi graduated from the training base with the highest score in the assessment. When Ouyang Shuo received the news, he immediately summoned Chui Tianqi to his residence to accept his new appointment. After the training in the Special Operations Base, Chui Tianqi had become more and more taciturn. His expression was hard and cold, and he looked as if no one was close to him. The young swordsman had completely transformed into an assassin. Yes, an assassin. Cold and merciless. With Chui Tianqi's personality, he was the best choice for an assassin. Last time, he had received a secret order to assassinate Zhang Yi, and he had done it cleanly and smoothly. He had not disappointed Ouyang Shua. This time, Ouyang Shua wanted to officially recruit Chui Tianqi into the Mountain Sea Guard. The commander of the Mountain Sea Guard, Shun Buhai, was already waiting at the door. Under Shun Buhai's guidance, the three came to a meeting room in the side hall. Shun Buhai was not surprised to see Chui Tianqi. When a Mountain Sea Guard had been established, Ouyang Shua had already revealed to Shun Buhai that there would be a department under the Mountain Sea Guard responsible for assassinations. This department would be called the Shadow Guard. The Shadow Guard was the shadow of the Mountain Sea Guard. Therefore, other than the commander of the Mountain Sea Guard, which was Shun Buhai's file, the members of the Shadow Guard could not be found anywhere else. The person in charge of the Shadow Guard had the title of Guardian of the Mountain Sea Guard, and his position was second only to the commander. Without a doubt, Chui Tianqi was the candidate that Ouyang Shua had chosen to be the guardian of the Shadow Guard. The members of the Shadow Guard were mainly people from the Jianghu, and they were equipped with divine armed crossbows. They were responsible for assassinating the secret meetings of other factions in the territory, and even for hunting across territories. According to Shun Buhai, there were many rats in the Mountain Sea City. Naturally, they had to deal with these spies quickly. Other than that, the Shadow Guard was also responsible for assassinating rebels in the territory. The Mountain Sea City relied on war, and it was inevitable that there would be remnants. The Shadow Guard was merciless towards these people. If they used the army to suppress them, it would not have a good influence, and it would easily cause the local people to panic. However, it was different if they used the Shadow Guard. They could take care of things without anyone knowing. Therefore, it could be said that the Shadow Guard was a knife that Ouyang Shua hid in the dark. If it had not come out, then there would be blood. Of course, the Shadow Guard, and even the Mountain Sea Guard, were different from the Ming Dynasty's brocade uniform guard. The Mountain Sea Guard only had the power to investigate and limited the power to arrest and interrogate. The real arrest and interrogation were under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Ouyang Shua wanted to supervise the officials, but he did not want to create an uncontrollable monster. In the system that Ouyang Shua designed, there were restrictions and checks everywhere. After handing Chui Tianqi over to Shun Buhai, Ouyang Shua stood up and left. The current Chui Tianqi did not need him to remind him every day, and he could start to take charge of things on his own. Next, Ouyang Shua briefly met with Song Tianxiong and the others and also supervised Binger's studies. After spending some time with Song Jia, he left the Mountain Sea City. The whole journey was extremely rushed. The pressure that Qiyu gave Ouyang Shua was too great. On the 12th of October, Ouyang Shua teleported to Wulong City. On the same day, Wang Feng led the Divine Martial Guard from Jinhai City to Wulong City to meet up with Ouyang Shua. Before Wang Feng left with his troops, the Jinhai City Guard Division was already in position. After that, Ouyang Shua did not stay in Wulong City, but directly led his troops to the front line. Before leaving, Ouyang Shua completely destroyed the teleportation formation in Wulong City. This teleportation formation had already completed its mission, and it could not be left behind. Ouyang Shua did not want any more accidents to happen. On the 14th of October, Ouyang Shua led the Divine Martial Guards to the headquarters that Han Xin had set up at the border. The headquarters that Han Xin had chosen was only a small county, only 20 kilometers away from the border. Before this, the Leopard Legion led by Han Xin, including the Imperial Guard Division, had already assembled here. Large amounts of rations and supplies were still being transported over. The border was densely packed with tents of the army. Banners fluttered in the wind, and spears stood in great numbers. In addition, the 1st Division of the Dragonxiang Legion, led by Shi Wansui, and the 3rd Division of the Tigerbright Legion, led by Shan Zhu, were already in position at the edge of the 100,000 Mountains. Once the headquarters gave the order, the two divisions could directly break into the hinterland of Wuzhou County. Similarly, the Mountain Barbarian Army, led by Qiyu, was also slowly approaching the border of Zhaoqing County. The scouts of both sides had already met in the wilderness, and a fierce battle had begun. Every day at sunset, the scouts who went out to investigate would drag back a few corpses of dead scouts. The investigation team of Shanghai City had received formal training from the Special Forces base. Even so, there were still casualties. From this, it could be seen that Chiyo's army was not easy to deal with. The flames of war had already been ignited. The real battle was about to begin. In this battle, Shanghai City had sent out a total of 8 divisions. Including the Divine Martial Guard, there were more than 110,000 soldiers. This was the first time that Shanghai City had sent out more troops than the enemy. Even on the main battlefield, Shanghai City had deployed more than 86,000 troops. Compared to the 100,000 troops led by Chiyu, there were less than 15,000 people. Even so, for Shanghai City, this battle was still an unprecedentedly tough battle. It could be predicted that the Battle of Wuzhou County would be even more difficult than the Battle of Zhaoqing. Not for anything else, but because Shanghai City's opponent this time was the demon god Chiyu and the mountain barbarian army under his command. Although the military intelligence department could not enter Chiyu City, they could still make a basic conclusion based on long-term investigations. These 100,000 mountain barbarian army were all elite troops, and they were well equipped. In particular, the news brought back by the scouts in the past few days had been further confirmed. Chiyu had been in Wuzhou County for a full year and a half. The entire Wuzhou County had been run by him like an iron bucket with a deep foundation. The mountain barbarians were not true barbarians. It was not without reason that the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom did not dare to rashly declare war on Chiyu City. Ouyang Shuan knew better than anyone the strength of the mountain barbarian army. Not to mention anything else, the Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry Brigade, led by Eli, had always been the enemy's nightmare on the battlefield. And this time, Shanghai City had to face the 100,000 Mountain Barbarian Army. Just thinking about it was frightening. On the contrary, in the Leopard Army under Han Xian, other than the 1st Division, the remaining 4 divisions had just been formed and were thrown into such a tough battle. The future was really unpredictable. It was precisely because of this that Ouyang Shua had to lead the Divine Martial Guard and the Imperial Guard Division to personally hold the fort. At the crucial moment, he still had to rely on his trump card troops to show their might. Ouyang Shua did not believe that Chiyu did not have a trump card. Different from the previous battles, the Battle of Wuzhou County was destined to be a battle in the wilderness. Shanghai City was the defensive side, but Ouyang Shua could not tolerate Chiyo's army crossing the border. It was equivalent to having no place to defend. Chiyu City was the offensive side, and with Chiyo's personality, he was even more disdainful of defense. Therefore, as soon as the two sides arrived, they would start a large-scale battle in the wilderness. The dark clouds of war covered the entire sky, making people feel oppressed and suffocated. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.